When you see a U-Haul coming out of the valley, out of Covelo, down onto the main highway 101, it's filled with weed 900% of the time. Thousands of pounds of processed. You got two dudes that are from Mexico here illegally, and then they take it, they sell it, and the fear factor was so huge for these people. Now they're coming up like in other parts of the county.
Where I know U.S. attorneys that have been caught manufacturing evidence, fired, and then rehired in another jurisdiction in a supervisor's position. So you were given a promotion. You've already framed people. If that's happening in a federal level, what's it like at a good old boys network of a small town sheriff's department?
They do a search warrant for the IP address, comes back to the lieutenant's house. That's weird. Let's do a search warrant to the internet provider. Okay, it's Comcast under the lieutenant's name. Okay, that's weird. Who lives in the lieutenant's house at the time? The lieutenant, his wife, 18-year-old son. So let's do some common sense here. It's more than likely going to be the lieutenant or his son.
Hey, this is Matt Cox, and I am here with Trent James. He is a former law enforcement officer, and he's got a super interesting story, and we're going to get into it right now. So check it out.
So I'm 35 years old. Currently, I was born in Haverford West, Wales. My mom was in the military, never met my dad, and she was a single mom for the vast majority of, the earlier years during my childhood. We moved around a few times. And I ended up in Mendocino County, California, when I was about 8 years old in Ukiah. That in Mendocino County is very rural, and it's part of the Emerald Triangle, along with Humboldt County and Trinity County. And that is basically, those three counties are where the vast majority of the marijuana, the good marijuana, is grown for the entire country. So I grew up there, and I was a piece of shit growing up, for sure. I was not a good kid by any means. And through my teenage years, I was very, very angry. Got suspended a lot, all the time, and switched to a couple different schools. Barely graduated high school. I didn't give a shit about anything back then, and when you're a teenager, kind of also you think that you know what's best and you know everything. I had a lot of run-ins with law enforcement during those years too. And I would say, cuss them out to their face. I would say, fuck you, pig and stuff like that. I hated cops. And it was, I got arrested a couple times, once when I was 17, another time when I just turned 18 over a little stupid bullshit. Nothing major. But I just really pissed off and angry. I had no direction, no idea what I wanted to do with my life at all at that point. And my mom, God bless her, she had zero control over anything that I did. And she, would tell me, like, you don't give a shit. You don't care about your life. You don't care about anything. And I said, I don't. I was very self-destructive. And looking back, I went out of my way to make my situation worse. As the worst that I could make my life at the time, I did it intentionally just because I was so pissed all the time for whatever fucking reason that is. I don't know. But anyway, so I graduated. I had skipped third grade, so I graduated high school a little early, and I didn't turn 18 for a while after that. So I fucked around for 3 additional years or so after high school, just drinking, partying, and again having zero goals, ambition, or direction. Where some of my friends had gone off to college, but my close best friends, I was partying with those guys. And now those dudes have been arrested multiple times. A couple of my really close friends got into meth, heroin, shit like that. And I'm grateful I didn't go down that path. But yeah, so anyway, I decided that I started getting into working out and taking care of myself, which changed my whole life. It gave me some structure, and it gave me the more that I saw progress, it made me want to continue to go down that route and not party and drink and smoke weed and do all that stupid shit that I was doing and fucking around. So it helped me mature a little bit, which I was incredibly immature up until that point. Not that I'm overly mature now, but I decided to move out of county with one of my buddies. And I made that decision because I knew that if I stayed where I was living, I was going to end up in prison at some point just because of how I was. And so we went out of county, and that friend now, he works for, he's a highway patrol guy, and still close friends to this day. But I ended up going to college and I took a criminal justice class as part of a general education requirement. And at that point, I had no intention of being a cop ever. And it was very interesting to me. It was the only subject matter that, for whatever reason, ever interested me up until that point. I hated school. Again, like I said, I barely graduated high school. Fortunately for me in high school, I had some really cool fucking teachers and a really cool principal that went out of their way to make sure that I didn't get expelled or whatever. Like, I mean, I was on academic probation and attendance probation and behavior probation, all that shit with the school. So that really helped me a lot. And for whatever reason, they liked me. I don't know, but I still remember them. And actually, I hated fucking cops back then, but I do remember our school resource officer to this day. And this was in like 2003 or four. Glenn Stark, I still remember him. Never saw him again after high school, but he was the only cop at the time that I did not cuss out to his face and say, "You're a piece of shit because you're a cop." He took the time to talk to me, and I had respect for that guy. So anyway, I took a criminal justice class. It was very interesting to me, and I was like 20 at the time, and so I said, like, maybe I can. This is weird because I always fucking hated cops. So I ended up going on a ride along with a local law enforcement agency where I was going to college, and I was like, holy fuck, this shit's actually pretty badass. So I continued my education, got a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and this was in like 2012, I think. And back then it was hard as fuck to get hired, like 2008 to 2013, because of the recession. They were laying off a lot of dudes. It was very competitive. And the whole reason I went to college also was, why I knew I needed a bachelor's degree is because I knew that my background was all fucked up and nobody was going to even look at me if I didn't have something positive in there. Because they look at time from the last time you fucked up and what you've done since then when you're going through a background check with these cop jobs. So went through in 2012. Graduated 2012. And then shortly after that, I got hired as an adult probation officer initially back in Mendocino County. So I moved back there, and it was not what I wanted to do, but I was just happy to have a job in law enforcement. I was still super young, so I thought that, like, I can segue into something else later and be an actual street cop. So I did that for a short period of time, had a caseload of, well, initially I was writing pre-sentence investigations reports for dudes that were, going through the court proceedings to see if they were going to be eligible for probation. Then I had a caseload.
Was this federal?
No, this was local, so adult probation, so, just county probation. So guys that would get felony. It was all felony level shit. So then I had a caseload. My first caseload was like 150 fucking dudes, and it was really weird for me because I hadn't been back to that county for fucking years at that point. Like I left for, I don't know, it was a long time, and so two of the dudes on my caseload were fucking some of my best friends that I had growing up. And I was sitting on the other side of the table with these guys, and one of them I was fucking piss testing, which was awkward as fuck. And he looked like dog shit. I used to play baseball with him and shit, and I was actually heavy into sports growing up, but just meth and so I actually went to my supervisor. I'm like, I can't fucking watch these guys, like, because it's too. Not that I'm going to do anything wrong. It's too fucking weird, man. I don't want there to be any issues, because you never know what gets said. And I was like, I'm not trying to get in trouble here.
Right.
I don't need it. This is too close to home. These guys were two of my best friends. So I don't want to run a risk of having anything misconstrued if something needs to go to court later on and be like, oh, Trent didn't disclose the fact that they used to be best friends and shit. So I was trying to do the right thing, and she's like, yeah, that sucks, Trent, tough shit. We're a small county, and you got to just fucking make it work. And I was like, all right, I'll go fuck myself then, I guess. So I thankfully, in that department, oh my fucking God, that talk about corruption and bullshit there. One of my friends there, she was dating the chief of, well, he later became chief of police at the local PD, and just bad domestic violence. He later got fired in that town in Ukiah for forcing a woman while he was on duty as a police chief to give him oral sex at her house. And then he got fired, And he also lost a civil case against my friend for beating the shit out of her during a relationship in front of her daughter. But during that time, it was everybody against my friend, the female. You're full of shit. He would never do that. Like, that's impossible. And this is the common theme in law enforcement, especially where I worked and where I grew up, is that people have that don't know any better. They have this misconception that cops are perfect angel fucking Boy Scouts, or that you're robots with no human emotion. And they have this expectation. Now it's a little different these days, where people, because of so much shit in the media, that people don't necessarily have that view. But back then, it was like it's impossible. He's a cop. No way, no way. Just because he's a fucking cop. And so anyway, later on, yeah, look what happened. So I actually got recruited to the local sheriff's office there. Short time at probation as a deputy. And right when I was on field training, this is what I heard about our DA at the time, the district attorney for the county. Some of the old guys would tell me this. I got told a lot of shit back then for some fucking reason, and I don't know why. But the older dudes, the older generation, they say, Trent, you know about the DA, right? And I said, no. What about him? Well, he runs an extortion scheme. And I'm like, what is it? What do you mean? They're like, well, weed's obviously fucking huge, around here. And it was, dude. Like, when I was growing up, even as a kid, like, everybody fucking smoked weed. It was commonplace. Like, you just did. They could steal it from their parents. You see grows fucking everywhere. It's fuck. It was everywhere always. So even in the 90s when I was growing up, and everything. So I was like, what do you mean? So they're like, well, when we go bust these growers it was a felony at the time in California for cultivation. We'll, seize their assets or cash or weed, right? And so the DA at the time, when it was still a felony, they're like, he will bring him in his office and he'll say, do you want to buy, what do you want to do? Do you want to buy a fucking misdemeanor, right? And so that's what was going on back then. It was like a lot of, it was all cash. A lot of people have come forward from this RICO case that I'm going to talk about too, and brown paper bags, zero receipts, $50,000, $100,000, one-on-one conversations in his fucking office. And this is all public record too. He actually had a lawsuit of this. So what he did to justify this is he combined two health and safety code laws, which you're a fucking DA. You don't have the authority to change laws, by the way. Also the interest of justice, because he's like, well, it's going to be cheaper if these guys just give us money and we don't have to run them through a jury trial and waste taxpayer dollars and all this shit. But the funny thing about that is, through this RICO case, I mean, there's zero documentation for any of it. There's no receipts. There's no paper trail. There's no nothing. Where the fuck did that money go? And at the time when I heard that, when I was super young and naive and green, I was like, that sounds illegal as fuck. And they're like, yeah, it is, but nobody gives a shit. So I was like, all right. So, but it was common knowledge, and he's admitted to doing it, but for those reasons that I just gave. So that was kind of my introduction into cop world there. And, Mendocino County, it's very, just to give some like a visual here. So it's a huge fucking county, huge, massive, very rural, very beautiful. But, the town that I grew up in, Ukiah, at the time, it was like 30,000, 40,000 people, maybe, small. And everybody knew each other, a lot of like rancher dudes and that sort of a thing. But so as time goes on, I actually shortly went to work in Covelo, Round Valley, which is an hour and a half northeast of where I lived in Ukiah. Still part of the county though, but it's an hour and a half away in the same fucking county. It was huge. And so I spent the vast majority of my career there as a deputy. I was a resident deputy, and that means that I lived in that town. I policed it like you would think of the 1850s in the Old West, where it's one sheriff for a whole town. That's what I did. And I was a canine handler for like 3.5 years. So I had a dog at the time. And that place was fucking crazy because it's very, very small. It was like a population of 1,500 to 2,000. And the nearest town from that was about 45 minutes away. And that town was only 4,000 people. So it was way out in the middle of nowhere. And I did that alone. But that town is a huge population of Mexican cartel, and then a huge checkerboarded Native American reservation. And then you have, population of white people. There's like a couple schools. There's a one grocery store, very small, two gas stations. But this town was the most dangerous area in the entire county, like by far the most violent. And the cartel dudes back then, or they still do this, but weed's gone down a lot since it got legalized. But a lot of them would pay the Native Americans to grow on reservation land. But what would happen is a lot of the homicide, so many fucking homicides and kidnappings and like the worst crimes you can think of, really. I was dealing with it alone for years on end. Like I didn't have any backup. It was always an hour away. Sometimes I had help from the tribal police guys when they were on duty. But California, unlike a lot of other states, reservations, it's a public law 280 state, meaning that the sheriff's office has jurisdiction over reservation land, not the tribal police. So everything on the res was us. It was the sheriff's office that were dealing with it. So, but that was a huge part of the weed was up there. And during this time too, I came to find out more about my administration, the guys that were in charge of me, the lieutenants there. And the sheriff's office wasn't huge. We had like 65 sworn, I think, always short staffed. And it was a good old boys club. It was dudes that had known each other for fucking 25, 30 years. Just old white motherfuckers that, quite frankly, had lost touch with reality, don't know how to community police. They're involved in a lot of weird shit too. But going through my time there, you hear more stories about these guys, right? And this is documented fucking shit too. Like, what was wild to me is that one of my lieutenants at the sheriff's office had been fired early in his career from a neighboring sheriff's office for raping a woman on duty. He arrested her male counterpart, her boyfriend or whatever, for domestic violence, arrested him, took him to jail, went back and raped her, right? And huge fucking lawsuit. She immediately called the FBI. She didn't even call anybody local. She's like, fuck that, right when he left, FBI. And she was able to fully prove that he was there because his dumbass had his radio on, and the traffic that was coming through, she heard it, relayed that to the feds. They backtracked it through dispatch and like, okay, he was definitely there. Long story short, that county is also a small, corrupt pile of shit that has a massive history too. And of course, he got terminated. But the thing with this is cops, when they fuck up, especially, I've even known dudes that have been terminated for fucked up shit. They get allowed to, a lot of them, quit or resign in lieu of termination, right? They get afforded that ability. It's a privilege. It really is. And it depends on how cool you are with your administration. A lot of times that happens because, dude, fuck, like, we don't want to let you go. We like you, but you fucked up big time on this. Holy shit. So he didn't go to prison because the victim in that case, it went on for a while. She settled out. Like, it was a huge fucking lawsuit. So he got fired and stayed out of it for a little bit. And then he went to become a cop at my department back in the day because his dad and his mom both worked at the sheriff's office. His dad was a supervisor who was friends with the sheriff at the time. And, one of my other lieutenants was a prior Norteño gang member that used to sell meth and acid and got arrested for beating the fuck out of somebody with a baseball bat in his, early 20s, and did more shit on patrol. But he gets promoted. And then another one that's a documented pedophile had sex with a 14, 15-year-old girl as a cop from his prior department, got fired and, of course, got a job at my agency. And they're all protected. And another one, dude, and the guy that's in charge of IAs there, so that's internal affairs investigation. So when cops do something against policy or the law violation, they will go into, somebody files a justified formal complaint. Their department will ideally put them into an investigation, look into it, and try to validate it or invalidate it, right? So the dude that runs that there currently was fired from his prior department for a hit and run on duty and lied in his own IA, got fired, and now he's in charge of them because his stepdad or his father-in-law at the time was the captain at the sheriff's office. So you see what I'm saying?
The little mafia.
Yeah,
little gang.
so my buddy that I'm gonna get into, this is all super fucking abridged too. Like I said, dude. So my buddy that is going through this RICO case, I say he's heading it up, but there's like a shitload of people involved in terms of the victims of this thing. But he actually said Mendocino County, where I'm from, the cop shops there, the law enforcement agencies, including the DA's office, it's its own criminal enterprise. He actually said that too. It's like the mafia. And
Well, I had watched a couple of the videos on your channel,
mhm,
on the confessions channel, not the two cops.
yeah,
But I'd watched one of those videos, and you were talking about how people leave comments saying this kind of stuff doesn't happen and this isn't true. And I mean, I know, like I know I know of U.S. attorneys just from writing stories where I know U.S. attorneys that have been caught manufacturing evidence, caught lying,
yeah.
fired, and then rehired in another jurisdiction in a supervisor's position. So you were just an assistant U.S. attorney. Now you're a supervising U.S. attorney. So you were given a promotion. Granted, it was a year later in another jurisdiction, but I mean, like, you shouldn't have been a U.S. attorney. You've already framed people. You've been proven to frame people. Like there's court cases showing. Matter of fact, the middle district had to pay, I think, $3.5 million because you framed someone and they just rehire you. And that happens, so if that's happening in a federal level, what's it like at a good old boys network of a small town sheriff's department? Like obviously it's much, much worse.
You're absolutely right, and you do know you have a lot of knowledge on that front too. And I want to, in a little bit, I want to talk about something else that I saw you said that's totally applicable to a lot of these things too that I saw in one of your videos. But the thing of it is, at the time when I started that channel, and I'll get into that in a minute, like people are so people in the outside world, like just that live any other place, like Florida, even where I'm at now in Texas. Actually, maybe not. This place is fucked up too, but um, like they have a hard time. That county is so small that a lot of these people grew up together. It's a lot, truly is. Everybody knows everybody. And so the people that I was talking about on the YouTube channel, like for example, just the lieutenants, very brief. I didn't even hit on every supervisor there either. Um, their friends are everywhere in the community, families everywhere in the community. So they had this, like, people would say, "Oh, Trent, you're full of shit. You're making this up." And I'm like, because they don't want to. Nobody wants to hear that shit. You don't want to hear your fucking uncle, your dad, your brother, your lifetime friend is a felon, pedophile, rapist, fucking crook, right? Nobody wants to hear that shit. So you're going to be like, this is impossible. I've never known him to be anything other than a great, solid, stand up cop. It's like, yeah, dumb shit. Like, what do you think they're going to do to you? Sit you down and say, hey, man, just want to let you know I've been committing fucking crimes. Don't tell them.
Right.
No. So that's not how that works, right? So, people thought I was full of shit until all this stuff started to come to fruition that I was talking about. But like that rape thing I told you about, full fucking report, man, that still is. I'm not going to say where it is, but it is in existence. And there, a lot of these other things are fully documented, right? But so anyway, so I'm hearing all this shit throughout the years, right? And these lieutenants that I'm discussing too, aside from the IA guy, nobody fucking liked these guys. And there is a massive issue in law enforcement still to this day. I have friends that are cops across the fucking country, man, and in Homeland Security, fucking the FBI, Department of Justice, police department, sheriff's offices, like all kinds of shit, right? Guys that used to be lieutenants and sergeants and stuff. I was a sergeant at one point, but it's an issue that plagues a lot of areas in the country. And since I started my other social media platforms, like I've had conversations with a shitload of cops that are experiencing the same things that I did. And it's basically, what that means is a lot of corruption at the administrative level. These guys that are in those positions that run that world get promoted for specific reasons, and they just ruin fucking lives, man. There's a lot of shit that goes on behind closed doors that would completely. The public has no fucking clue. The public has no idea, man. You see shit on like CNN about a cop like unjustifiably beating somebody up. What about unjustifiably murdering somebody? You know what I'm saying? I'm not talking about like where he said he had a gun and shit. I'm talking about going to their fucking house at nighttime and blowing their fucking head off, right? And the shit that you see like in Hollywood movies and stuff with some of these guys, like I worked with those dudes in their prime, right? When they were, this is like back before they were doing this shit in like in late 90s, early 2000s. Um, when I was still a kid for sure. And that's what the current sheriff would fall back on when I talk out about these guys. Oh, Trent's just talking about shit that happened when he was a kid or, a long time ago. Well, it's like, yeah, that's cool, bro. But let me ask you this. Do you think that because I was a kid, that it's cool that these dudes are, a pedophile, a rapist, or whatever, just because 20 years has gone by? You think that they can still be a lieutenant at the sheriff's office? Not to mention the shit they're doing now. No, man, it could be 300 years and it's still not cool.
Funny, the Rodney King, the Rodney King videotape.
Yeah.
I remember people used to say, yeah, well, that's the exception. I was like, it is the exception that it was videotaped. Because
Yes.
it's not that it doesn't happen all the time. The exception part is somebody was there with a video camera.
Well, and that's why I started my buddy and I started our podcast separate from my main channel to give the public like a real inside, honest look into what law enforcement is, because him and I don't give a shit. Like we have nothing to hide. Our records are exemplary, especially mine, and cops don't talk about that stuff. And what I found out doing this and discussing some of these things is that I've gotten a lot of information over the years, especially since I started doing my YouTube channel, from guys that are retired, that some moved to Florida because that's like the spot to go as a retired cop, or Idaho. They would call me and say, hey, I like what you're doing, Trent. I don't like these guys that you're talking about. This is what I know from during this time. This is where you can go look. And in addition to that, don't you ever fucking say my name to anybody. They won't talk about it, because in that culture, and this is like the prison gang culture too. It's like, there's no snitch, right? No snitch mentality, which we know is fucking bullshit. I'll get to that later. That's, I was talking about what you said, right?
Right.
But it's the same thing in the cop world. You don't snitch on another fucking cop. It doesn't matter if it is your mortal enemy and you hate that motherfucker. You don't say anything. It's very taboo. And it's ingrained into a lot of these guys, especially the older generation that I worked. It didn't matter, just having conversations with them, man. It didn't matter how much they hated somebody at the administrative level. They would rather die pretty much than discuss it like officially, with the feds or anybody. It's, you don't do it. And I had a lot of people when I started my channel that tell me I was going to get killed, by these dudes, like, you better watch your back, Trent. I'm like, what the fuck are these guys going to do? But that's how bad that is though. Like people compare law enforcement to like the biggest gang, right, in the country. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I said, sometimes people get this twisted. I'm not a cop hater. I was a cop. I have a lot of close friends that are still in law enforcement. I'm anti fucking bullshit, corruption, hypocrisy, right? So if you're going to do the job, do it the right way. And I would say the majority are good cops. The majority are. But the ones that I worked with, that supervised us, no, they were not. And I got a lot of people that can vouch for that too. So kind of got segued here. So I was working out in that area, living by myself on the res and cartel land, pretty much. A lot of good, honest people out there, though, the people I'm still friends with to this day. But I don't even have like the words for that place, man. That shit was fucked up. Like it was every street, fat fucking grows. They're all illegal. Some of them are trespass grows. Like I said, it's like a lot of a reservation stuff. So, and unfortunately, you have the statistics there, right? With the poverty, low socioeconomic culture, alcoholism, drug addiction, and there's no opportunities out there. Like I said, it's a very small rural town that is isolated as shit with a horrible history. Not just from the 1800s where the Native Americans got marched in there forcefully and there was massive like genocide and shit that went on in that town. But prior resident deputies before me, like, yeah, I mean, people could just Google Mendocino County, Covelo, and it's just inundated with articles and crazy shit. That, you had a deputy out there that got shot and killed. You had these other ones that have gotten fired for banging girls on duty while their wives were at home. picking them up at the local bar there in their patrol cars, taking them out into the woods, hooking up with them and shit. The one that's most notable is the another lieutenant that worked at the sheriff's office when you said they get promoted, right? So this dude, and this was back like in 02 to 07, right? When Trent was in high school or middle school, whatever. So he lived out in this town, this small town of Covelo. He was a sergeant, and his name's Shannon Barney. And he had 3 resident deputies that lived there with him that he were underneath him. And back then, what these guys would do is not that this is illegal at all. And this is kind of a matter of preference, I guess, but they would all, meet up and have swinger parties, right? And orgies and shit like that. They would all bang each other's wives and vice, whatever, swap around and stuff. Sometimes on duty though, so that's a policy violation. And when I worked there too, I had a shitload of people in town tell me this also that had grew up there and were around for these guys, that these dudes were not, a couple of them were extorting the weed growers out there. Like harvest time, around October, they would say, and this is back when it was you could go to prison even in California back then for this. So illegally growing, do you want to give us 10 grand or do you want us to fucking come back and hit your spot and arrest you? Right. And they would do that very often, along with the swinger stuff, getting drunk on duty. And 2 of these dudes actually killed themselves under suspicious circumstances. One of them,
the officers?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. One of them killed himself, shot himself. That's what I'm saying. This town that I lived and worked in, it has like the darkest, worst fucking history out of like anywhere, just in terms of like how small the population is, dating back to the 1800s with the genocide for the Native Americans, moving forward with the cops. And so, so one of the deputies killed himself at his house in Covelo. And this was when everything came crashing down on them, because what had happened is a deputy, I'm not going to name his name, but his wife was involved in this wife swapping shit and he didn't know about it. So he found out about it and he was getting passed up for opportunities to promote because of this shit, because he wouldn't participate in a lot of their other stuff that they were doing too. So they found out a way to fire his ass for no reason. He was a good ass fucking cop too. You don't want to play, then fuck you, because the sergeant out there was really close friends with the sheriff at the time, who was also a corrupt piece of shit, and the lieutenant that ran that sector. So they fired this guy. He sued and he won his job back, and they proved all of the allegations. But what had happened, and this is all public record too. Well, these incidents are, but the judge, Nadell, she sealed all the court documents, and that guy had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. He is never allowed to talk about it. And the reasoning for this, she said, is because it's in the best interest of the community and everybody as a whole that we don't let this information out. No, what that means, what that equates to is you don't want the public to know about all the things that this guy like came forward about these dudes, the crimes they were committing, and how you guys are going to let them keep their jobs and get away with it, is what that is. So when this was all going on, though, the one dude killed himself in 2007, the first guy at his town in Covelo. And when I worked there, right, everybody would be like, hey, Trent, did you hear about Brett White? And I said, yeah, I know the stories. He killed himself at his house. No, he didn't. His boss, Shannon Barney, shot his ass. And I'm like, well, it's like one of those things. It's like a rumor everybody fucking said the same shit. And it's like, come to find out, I looked back in some of these old articles that went on during that time. And a prior sheriff, so that corrupt sheriff, he quit halfway through his term. The lieutenant, the captain at the time took over. His name was Kevin Broyne. And Kevin did not like what the fuck was going on out there. He was actually a really good, solid, honest dude. And he tried to fire that sergeant that was heading up the wife swapping and the extortion and all that shit, right? But in the midst of all that, Brett White, the deputy, shot and killed himself. But in the articles, it says, he's like, the sheriff's office is not automatically ruling this a suicide. We have to do further investigation. Now that's very weird, because my job as a deputy, because we were so small, we did everything. Like a lot of agencies that are bigger have like their own coroners division, domestic
Right.
violence unit, property crimes unit. No, no, you can get like 5 years experience like in 1 year where I worked because you do everything. So all the coroner's cases, I do them from, or everybody on the street from start to finish. And I've been to a shitload of suicides and everything you could think of, including gunshot wounds to the head, which is how this guy died. I can't think of a time where, so when you get there, you're going to look for like signs of foul play, right? But it's pretty obvious, for the most part, gun in the hand or down next to where it would be, like you're going to look at the fall of that weapon. Does that make sense for his body position, how heavy the gun is, the trajectory of the, wherever he put it on his head, where the exit wound is going to be, the trajectory of the bullet, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So there's a lot of things that you look at when you go there to do the initial investigation, as well as some other stuff, but you can very easily determine, like pretty fucking quick, if you're going to need to call a detective out to take over a potential homicide investigation. Okay. So the fact that back then the sheriff was like, we can't rule this as a suicide right now. Fucking red flag number one. And then the lieutenant at the time that was covering for him, and this is like back in like 2010 at this point, goes on in this article too. And he's like, yeah, we're aware of the rumors. We've gotten the emails and the phone calls because everybody in that community, not everybody, but a shitload of people were calling in saying, hey, we know that guy did not kill himself. This is what we know, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, that sergeant that was involved in all of that shit just got taken out of Covelo and later promoted to lieutenant. That sheriff that was trying to fire him and go against the good old boys club and the grain, he lost an election to that lieutenant that was supervising that whole fucked off thing up there. And shortly after that, he got ran the fuck out of there. That guy that lost the election, he went back to being a captain, and he ended up retiring early. In an article, he's like, I just can't do it anymore. I don't see eye to eye with these guys. I want no part of it. So,
right,
because that's what happens. Like when you try to do the right thing at a lot of these agencies, and I've heard this from a lot of people that work in other counties and states too, they'll fuck your ass up. You're not going to have a job. Sometimes they'll put a case on you too. This is not conspiracy theory shit. Like this stuff actually fucking happens, man. And for whatever reason, like some people in the public have a hard time believing it. It's like, it's fucking wild to me. What I will say is that all the dudes that I worked with on patrol, solid motherfuckers. It's when you get to, most of the sergeants were cool too. Even though one of them right now is off on leave because a 19-year-old girl said that he raped her, which is fucking top secret classified, but I found out. And that's still in process, but it's like the guy's up. And those are the ones that you want to fit your agenda. If you're a sheriff, under sheriff, captain, chief, whatever your agency is, you want guys that are going to fit what you got going on, what you're about,
right,
that you can trust to keep your fucking secrets, right? So if I was a piece of shit as a sheriff, right, and I was a criminal and I was doing a bunch of stuff, would I want a bunch of goody two-shoe Boy Scout dudes as my lieutenants? Fuck no, man. I want the felons. I want the guy that was fired from that agency, and this one used to sell meth and be a gang member. I want these fucking guys.
right,
right? Because they're not going to roll on anything you're doing. So it's just common sense. That's how it works. So anyway, so I keep getting sidetracked here, but so I was out there, and it took a toll. It took a toll on me, dude. Like the fuck, like I don't even have the words for it. It's hard to explain like to get somebody to understand if they didn't do it, but living in an isolated place like that, because it was the national forest, okay? Like Round Valley is literally round, surrounded by fucking mountains, okay? And again, the nearest town is like an hour away. And very rarely did I see anybody. Nobody even checked on me. Every once in a while, like one of my sergeants would come out for something, but I was like left to my own devices, which is wild because of all the prior issues that cops have had out there, being fired, fucking shooting themselves, getting killed. But the sheriff at the time, not this most recent one, but the one prior, he allowed me to do it. He's like, I'll let you do it. I know you've been fucking working out there nonstop for years already. You know everybody. You're good at it. I trust you. So that's how that came to be. But it was really a crazy place, bro. Because like I get you, it's 7 days a week, and you have to community police the fuck out of that of a place like that because if you don't get trust and rapport with a small community, especially on the reservation, they do not like cops. Understandably so. Especially white cops. Like one of
Right.
my cops, brand new out there. What the fuck are you doing on the res, white boy? Straight up, big giant motherfuckers that have more tattoos than I do. And
Were
you
you tatted up at the time?
I had sleeves, and oddly enough, I actually got my neck and my hands when I was living out there. I was like, now I fit in. But um, I got more. I've always had a lot of tattoos, even when I started, which the older cops were not fucking happy about. But and it's one of those places too, and this because you were locked up, right? So like, but out there, it's a lot of they'll test you, right? So they're gonna say like, let's test this fucking new rookie cop. They could tell you're a rookie in 2 seconds. The experienced guys, right?
Right.
And if you're gonna fucking like, you have three prison dudes standing there in the fucking yard, and you're there to investigate some stupid fucking call that doesn't even mean anything, they're gonna see what you do. Because if you waver at all in your command presence, they see some fear in your fucking eyes, you're fucked.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
So it's one of those places, and this is hard to explain to people too, where you have to talk a certain way. That's why I cuss a lot too. It's a bad habit I still carry with me. You have to talk a certain way. This is no, sir, can you please show me your hands? It's not that. It's not that place. You're in for. I would not be sitting here today if that was my approach. Okay, you treat everybody with respect, absolutely. But when you get tested like that, you have to handle it very different. And some of my biggest informants and snitches, this is how I was also very successful out there. I won Deputy of the Year in 2018 there as well for what I did in that place, are prison dudes. The biggest, baddest motherfuckers you can think of that run that town and also are shot callers in prison and outside of it were some of my biggest snitches.
Right.
The ones preaching "don't fucking snitch, we'll kill your ass"
Yeah,
are
of
texting
course.
Trent James, "Hey, I know you're looking for so and so. He's over here right now." And it's just a fact of life, dude. And you get these youngsters there that are their sons, their nephews, they're like little kids. They were like, "Yeah, fuck you, cop. Like, I'm not telling you shit." Even though I became close with a lot of kids there too, I'm not snitching because that's the culture that gets emulated there.
Yeah, that's what's propagated. That's what everybody said. That's the popular thing to say.
Yep, but it's not true. And you said it in one of your videos. It's not reality. It's like, and what you said too really stuck with me too. You're like, if this was reversed roles and somebody else was in my position and they had a chance to snitch on me, they would be the first one to do it. 100%. That is fucking true. I would tell guys that too. I'd be like, dude, I don't know what you think you're doing. Your homie over there, he already snitched your ass out. Now, sometimes that's a tactic that cops will use to get somebody to provide information.
Right.
But the hard dudes, they know better than that. I didn't even play games with those guys. I would straight just tell them facts. I don't play interrogation, interview tactics or anything like that. So, sorry, this dude's making noise behind me. But
That's right.
so, but it was real. They would snip like, "Trent, don't take me to jail. What do you want to know?" "Okay, what the fuck where's so and so hiding his AK-47 stash?" "Oh, it's a fuck, immediate."
Right.
Immediate. So, but it was an interesting place. But I came really cool with those guys, man. They went to jail when it was time to go, but I didn't fuck with them over stupid shit. So you got a dude that's a Norteño guy or Indian Pride dude, fresh out of prison on parole, out there in the middle of nowhere, and I live there in the middle of town. Everybody knows where I live. Am I gonna take that guy to jail and violate his parole for driving with no driver's license? No, fuck no, I'm not. Absolutely not. So you have to police it different than everywhere else. But
Right.
when it was like the shit that I had to take care of, quality of life issues, because that same guy's doing fucking drive-bys, or breaking into homes and shit like that. Yeah, they knew it was time. They knew it was time.
Well, what's funny? It makes me like the more serious the place is, the more laxed you have to be
Mm.
to survive. And it's funny because I had an SIS lieutenant in federal prison tell me this. So I was at the medium for like 3 years. When I went to the low, you have to have, as you come into intake, you talk to medical, you talk to psych, you talk to, all these different departments. Well, when I got to SIS, I remember he walked in, he said, listen, you're not going to have any problems here. He said, well, he said, I'll simplify it for you. He is in the pen. We're trying to keep the inmates from stabbing us.
Yeah.
In the medium, we're trying to keep them from stabbing each other. He said, at the low, we're trying to keep them following the rules. He said, it's that simple. He said, you're a rule follower, you're going to be fine. And he left. But that's the truth, because at the pen, they're super respectful to the inmates because they're extremely dangerous. At the medium, they're a little bit less respectful, but still pretty respectful. At the low, the cops are maniacs because they're talking to a bunch of guys that are rule followers who don't want to go anywhere. So, you can at a lower, if you're in suburbia, you can pull anybody over for anything at all because none of them are going to give you a problem. Yes, sir. No, sir.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I can't believe that you couldn't see my tag. Of course, I deserve a ticket for that. I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But if you're in a high gang area, you see 4 gangbangers in a car that you can barely see their tag. It's like, I'm going to let them go,
Yeah.
because that could go so wrong. Or you call them up, you pull them over, and real quick, hey, bro, check your tag, bro. You can't have that filter thing over the tag, okay? No problem. I don't need to see your license. You guys are good. That buys a lot of respect.
It does. You're 100% correct. You already know you're right on that. But yes, that is exactly how that plays. So, I'm thinking like, hey, Trent, you're in and these dudes too, like they follow prison rules still when they get out, right? Because that becomes, they get institutionalized. They've been in and out their whole lives and shit. And the violent, dude, the violence, holy fuck. I'd never seen anything like it. And I doubt that I ever will again that goes on out there. But, I'm thinking like, hey, a cop's been smoked out here before. Prior resident deputies, they had their house shot at. Everybody knows where I live.
Well,
Yeah, am
in
I going to be jacking?
Texas and Arizona, there's cartel members having shootouts with the cops.
Yeah,
On
yeah,
you in the U.S.
yeah.
Like, in Florida, if you told someone that, they'd be like, yeah, that's not possible. No, there's cartel in Texas and in Arizona, in Texas, having shootouts with the police. They're like, that I don't believe that. Because just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. Just because it's not happening here.
Well, and that's my whole point, dude. Just because people don't experience it or haven't seen it themselves, like I know that shit happens. But for me, yeah, dude, like it's in that town. Let me just put it in perspective. When I lived out there was basically no fucking internet. There's no street lights. There's no stoplights. There's no fucking cameras. People can't film shit out there because, yeah, if they want to go like maybe upload it somewhere else later, it's dark at nighttime.
Right.
And I don't mean like when I say like you can't see shit. There's no lights of any kind.
Well, like you said, your backup's an hour away.
Yes.
Nobody's coming to help you.
No one's coming to help me, dude. So like, at nighttime, this is one of my fondest fucking memories of living out there. And this is no joke, dude. I'm not saying, hey, this shit does sound cool, by the way. This is a fact. Anybody that did that job too, like can vouch for this shit. I'd go out in my backyard at nighttime, chill and drink some tea. And you hear fully automatic fucking gunfire, like from my neighbors behind me, just because these dudes, cartel guys, they shoot rounds from their fucking grows. One, because yeah, they get drunk and fuck around, but two, it's a warning to anybody in the area: do not come over here and try to jack our shit, otherwise you're gonna get fucking smoked. Because that was happening a lot back then too. People would my other next door neighbor, I just look out my kitchen window, huge fucking grow, huge. And he got hit a couple times when I'm sleeping fucking, 100 feet away or whatever it was. So by these dudes, but it was a lot like that, man. I'd just be out at nighttime and you just hear the fucking just gunfire, dude. I heard an actual gunfight one time across the street from where I lived. You'd hear boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, whatever. And then 2 seconds later, opposing side, boom, 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 boom. These motherfuckers are shooting each other. And that one was natives and cartel dudes. And it was always beefing over fucking land. Because a lot of the cartel guys too, they wouldn't even get permission. They would just grow on some plot of land somewhere. Not fucking smart. But the thing with those cartel guys too is why they will shoot at cops, whatever. No one knows who they are. These fools don't have social security numbers and dates of births, man, like that are documented, right? So out there, They, creep into my house, which was an old 1960s piece of shit with no insulation, no alarm or anything, and froze my ass off in the winter. Come in, fucking kill my ass, and they'd be back down in Mexico while they're still processing my stupid body, dude. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just common sense. And the native community, a lot of good, honest people there too. People that I'm friends with as well. I do agree that it gets a stigma, a bad perception that people have associated with it because of, it's just like anything else. But it is true that a lot of crazy shit went on there. But those dudes, a lot of them, they don't give a fuck. They're 16-year-old Trent at 40 years old, right? They don't give a shit about anything. And that was very obvious when they were doing the things that they were doing. But yeah, man, like years of getting called out because, hey, Trent, so and so just got shot in the head over on the res. You got to go deal with that. We're sending another unit your way. He'll be there in an hour. And I show up, and there's 40 fucking people at this thing. And a dude, he's still living. They're the fucking one of the paramedic dudes that lived in town is trying to bandage this fucking fool's head up as they're calling in a helicopter. I have people fucking everywhere. The suspect is still outstanding, and you just have to figure it out. You know what I'm saying? No one's coming to save your ass. All the pursuits I got in, over 100, it's like they're always over in a matter of 10, 15 minutes. No one's coming to help you with that. You just have to hope that it works out for you, or everything else that I did too. So it was years of, that's just like, that's a whole thing by itself, but years of that, the adrenaline dumps left and right, and being paranoid and always in life and death situations. Also dealing with resident deputy duties, going to the schools every day, which I did. Try to talk to these kids that wanted to go to prison because they thought it was cool. Graduation rate extremely low out there. No role models to look up to, and I saw that. I was able to identify with these kids a lot. 3 of them actually, when they ended up graduating, thanked me personally for helping them, and that meant a lot to me. It's like, dude, even if that's only one kid, like I'll fucking take it.
Right.
Going to the businesses, dealing with a lot of those civil things that a lot of cops wouldn't even bother with. So you wear a lot of hats. Going to homes to talk to kids that don't want to go to schools. That really a cop function, not necessarily, but so you do a lot of things. I loved it though. I loved it, and I volunteered for it. But years of that, coupled with the running around in the woods, dealing with hardcore shit and seeing, shit that I'll never forget. It wore on me. So I finally hit up the sheriff, and I was like, dude, I want to come out of this place. But at the time, one of these lieutenants, the pedophile one, like he and everyone fucking hated this guy, dude. He was a piece of shit. They tried to fire him during his training phase when he was super brand new at this agency. I'm talking like early 2000s, I think. His trainers tried to fire him. They're like, dude, he is unsafe. He's cocky as fuck. He doesn't know what he's doing, and just a bunch of shit going on. But he had a friend that was friends with the lieutenant that ran the training program. Like, no, we're passing him. Like, cool, thanks, guys. So close not to having to deal with this guy. So anyway, but that's how that works. It's all about who you know, especially in the good old boys club, So he took over up in my area, and he was a tyrant. He was lying on guys' evals because he didn't like them, which got proved. The captain found out, but he just said, please knock it off. He was taking credit for the shit that I was doing in that town. He was lying to the captain about stuff that me and my partners were doing or saying. And he was just a piece of shit. And I couldn't take orders from this guy because I was like, dude, you got fired back in the day for fucking a teenage chick, dude. And also this other stuff I know about you, like you're fucking garbage. And at the time he was making it harder for us to do our job, especially me in Covelo, because he thought that he knew what was best. And I'm like, dude, I worked out there for years and lived out there, bro, and like worked the res. You've been out there like twice your whole fucking life. What are you talking about? You just because you have bars doesn't mean you know what you're talking. And that's the problem too. Same with the military and cop shops, cop world. These dudes get these levels of authority, and they're like, I know what's best. You very rarely do you know what's best.
Well,
the guy that's your subordinate.
It's funny in the BOP, because they have like a union, they can't fire people. So the more of a problem you are, to get rid of you, they give you a promotion.
Yeah.
So you end up getting promoted from a CO to, you go from like a CO, you're a problem as a CO. Okay, make him a counselor. Okay, he's a problem as a counselor. Make him a unit manager. Okay, he's a problem as a unit manager. Make him a supervisor. Okay, he's a problem. I mean, just to get him out of the prison.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I've seen that happen over and over again where they had, and the other, when all the other officers hate your guts
Yeah.
and the inmates hate your guts and they cannot fire you. And even the other officers will say, well, eventually a supervisor position will come available and they'll force them to take the supervisor position and they'll ship them across the country and they'll be somebody else's problem for another 3 or 4 years. And then they'll ship them somewhere else. It's like, are you serious? They're like, well, they just can't fire them. You
Well, and
know?
think about the poor bastards that are going to be underneath that person, because they like at my agency too. They promote you. This was a common saying too. You fuck up, you move up.
Yeah.
Everybody said that, and you're right. But like, so for my department, so California is not an at-will state unless you're a chief or a captain or an undersheriff or whatever. But for us, dude, it took a lot. You got to put a fat case on somebody to fucking fire you. But for me, I was never in an IA my whole career. No internal affairs investigations. I had a couple stupid little shitty write-ups for like, I don't even remember what they were for, but I had like exceed standards on multiple years of my yearly evaluations. I got deputy of the year, like I said. So I was doing my job. They had nothing on me. So I wasn't worried about anything. And that's why I was so vocal. And so anyway, so me and my partners are all complaining. Even the sergeants there were fucking bitching about this lieutenant, dude. He belonged in prison still or having to register as a sex offender from his shit back in the day. But it got so bad that I actually asked for a meeting with the captain at the time, and who was a reasonable person, talked to him for an hour and a half, and he agreed with me. He said, I agree with you, Trent. But I didn't know it was this much of an issue. I do know that lieutenant, Andrew Porter. I know his history. I know that he is not liked by fucking anybody. He had stated during his promotion interview with the old sheriff, the sheriff was like, hey, Andy, like, nobody likes you, because he had been a sergeant in the detective unit. How am I supposed to promote you? And he's like, Sheriff, it's not my duty to get people to like me. It's my job to, get a promotion. He wanted to be a lieutenant more than anything else on earth. And come to find out, the stereotype with this guy is true. He got his ass whooped in high school and he became a cop for the wrong reasons. I became a cop to help people that couldn't help themselves, as cliche and corny as that sounds, and to have fun, right? Something new every day. And I devoted my life and a lot of my mental health that I'll never get back to the area that I chose to be a one-man show in, right? But I had a conversation with him, and he's like, I had to promote him. He did the best on the test. The other two sergeants that you want to be your lieutenant that are way better leaders and everybody agrees, yeah, they didn't do the best on the test, so we got to give it to this criminal. And I was like, you know what? And it kept getting worse. So I said, fuck it, dude. I'm out. I can't keep working here, bro. So I gave a month and a half notice. They let me take my dog with me, even though the county owned him. But because at the time, my guy that's no longer my friend, he had been fired from my department a few years prior for time fraud for 2 hours. He was at a training. He went home, chilled, and then didn't clock out, and they fired him for it because he was kind of like me, loudmouth, goes against the grain, hated the fucking administration. They hated him. So he became a lieutenant at a local police department in my area. And he's like, Trent, come over here. You can be a sergeant. I had met with their chief already at that point. And he's like, get out of that shitty fucking agency, man. It's just going to get worse. And so I was like, oh, cool. And at this point, dude, like we had a lot of other people that were transferring out and quitting and shit during that time. And in my mind, I had already done everything that I needed to do. I had like multiple lifetimes worth of experiences at that point. And the agency I was going to go to at the PD was like Disneyland compared to where I had worked before. It was just night and day, no, brutal fucking, stabbings, homicides. Dude, when I was out there, I had a dude get shot in the fucking head, broad daylight behind my house. like that, and body dumps on the side of the road. They would just chuck this one kid, 19 years old. They just chucked his ass out on the side of the road after they riddled him with bullets, right on the main roadway in town there at like 10 o'clock in the morning. Cartel shit,
Right.
to prove a fucking point. Right? It's the things that go on out there, man. It's fucking crazy. And people, found in trunks and shit like that, buried. One of my first homicides I ever went to out there, dude was fucking a weed shit, of course. How he got found is his dog dug up his fucking hand in his front yard. You know what I'm saying? And then somebody called that in, like, hey, I think there's a fucking body over here. Yeah, because his partners, grow dudes, fucking smoke, murder his ass. It's a fucking gnarly place, man. And it's like they had that Netflix episode, Murder Mountain. That's from Humboldt. I
Yeah.
don't know if you've seen it, but it's Humboldt County, which is the neighboring bordering county to Mendocino County where I worked. It was hilarious to me. I watched it at the time I lived in Covelo. I'm like, dude, it's an interesting story, don't get me wrong, and it's pretty egregious, but I was like, that is not it. They need to come do some shit about this place, man. It's fucking like 20 times worse. Because like for us around harvest, right, you would get the trimigrants that would come in. That's what we called them. So people from Peru, Brazil, Portugal, New York, they would come in and trim. And back then you could make a shitload of fucking money trimming weed, 300 bucks a pound, fucking whatever. But the problem was a lot of these people were never getting heard from again. Their family was calling us saying, hey, our son went to work, our 25-year-old son or daughter said they were going to work on a farm of some kind in your county. We're from Philadelphia. We haven't heard from them in 6 months. And that's it. Because when it comes time to pay, depending on who you go and trim for, what's easier, right? So, and it's the national forest.
It's like the guys that dig the tunnels for the cartel in Mexico.
Mhm.
They keep them there in a warehouse, have them dig the tunnels, and 3 months after the tunnels, 3 months of working, you're promised a whole bunch of money. Then when the tunnel's done, they bring you back. They have you dig a big trench, and they take you out and execute you in the desert, and they bury you, and you're just some poor kid from some town 100 miles away from where the tunnel is. Your family hasn't seen you in 3 months. Nobody knows where you are. Like, why would I pay you the 30,000 or 50,000 I promised you when I could just execute you? I mean, we're already, you know what I'm saying? We're already in the middle of nowhere. We're already the cartel. Like,
Yeah.
these guys are mostly murderers anyway. You're just some peasant from the middle of nowhere. Nobody's going to miss you, but your family, they don't know where you're at.
Yeah, well, and to prove that point too, that the mom's calling, hey, my son went to somewhere called Covelo.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
Right, right. It's like they already know, but these dudes would know because out there, like I said, to the rural aspect, this isn't like a populated area. Like I said, there's no, again, lights, no cameras, no nothing. You kill people. A lot of unsolved homicides out there. One of them was the most notable one I was involved in 2018. It's still unsolved to this day. We know who the suspect is. He's still fucking living there. But that's how easy it is to kill somebody out there and completely get away with it, even if you're fucking sloppy as fuck. And that wasn't everybody out there that obviously went out and then they never got heard from again. But it was every harvest, man, like for just every year. It was like that. So, but we were told, I got told by my sergeant, dude, go around town when you see all these people coming in with accents from France and all over the world, bro. They would come to this little town in fucking Mendocino County every fucking harvest, dude. It was wild, and hundreds of them. But they wanted us to go around and warn them, say, hey, you need to get the fuck out of here. There is a high likelihood you're never going to get heard from again, or the girls, some sexual shit that you don't want to happen to you there, because that happened too a lot, and it was horrible, fucking horrible. And yeah, so but yeah, it was just, for me, it was too much, man. And I got really close with a lot of people out there because I had worked there so long, and a lot of them started dying for various reasons, not in good ways either. And coupled with everything else, like I said. So anyway, so I gave a month and a half notice and went to the PD as a sergeant. And it was more bullshit there. My lieutenant at the time, he Apparently, I didn't know this guy at all. I had been friends with him for like some years, and he had turned into a tyrant, power tripping. I had knew some stuff about his history, but not all of it. And all my subordinates fucking hated him. This was a very small department at the new one. We had like 11 people total, and he was running the chief there because the chief was soft. He was from like LA, but he was old, and a lot of those older chiefs will come up to Mendocino County or smaller cities to finish their fucking retirement at the chief pay, whatever. So he was just doing a bunch of shit and making our lives fucking miserable too, lying, wanted me to write my dudes up for bullshit, wanted us to go enforce our quotas. Okay, so yeah, quotas fucking exist, man. I'm so sick of people hearing that, dude, or cops lying to people. They fucking exist. When you don't give somebody a ticket and your supervisor bitches you out for it because you're not performing like you should, you're expected to, especially to your peers. That's called a quota. You don't use the term quota, but those things exist. I work for a department. The city generates revenue from some of those tickets, and if you're a highway guy, the state does, right? If you're issuing like registration and shit like that. So
Right.
I didn't believe in it. I had been a deputy. I was dealing with people getting their fucking heads chopped off and shit, man. I'm like, I lit on fire while they're still alive. I'm like, I'm not gonna go force people to write window tint tickets, bro. I was like, I got 10 on my car. I'm not gonna go force people to get jammed up for shit that I also have. I have no front plate. No. And my subordinates would be like, hey, Trent, are you going to get in trouble? I said, I don't really care, man, because my lieutenant at the time, and this was a small town too, man, it was 4,000 people. And it was, again, like Disneyland, different pop type of, not the crazy crime shit. Stuff did happen there for sure. But I'm like, bro, we have to community police this place, man. It is very small. This is not the Bay Area, okay, or LA or fucking Miami, right? It's very small. So if we start pissing people off and jamming them up for a little bullshit, I said, we are not going to get any cooperation when we're trying to solve crimes. We're going to like create an even bigger divide, which is already hugely prevalent because this is like George Floyd was around this time, and COVID and all that shit too. So like there was a lot of shit in the media hating cops. I said, this is the last thing we need to be doing right now.
But
But
what I was going to mention to you is, the what I don't think people really understand is that, by giving tickets, like, that generates income for the city, the police department, and so, in a lot of ways, like, they want you to give it. Of course, they want you to give tickets. Why? It generates money. It puts money in our coffers. And it's not that they're making it up. It's like, just enforce these policies as best you can, or on an extreme level, on a very liberal level. But I was gonna say, my sister was kind of like on a sub council in Temple Terrace. Temple Terrace is a little town outside of Tampa. And I remember they had gone to the city council and said, look, you've got these no U-turn signs that literally go for about 2 miles. Like, you can't turn around in Temple Terrace on this little street. Like, it's dangerous to it's dangerous to try and turn around there. And I get the U-turn signs, but it's just such a pain in the ass, and it's always been an issue. So she goes there and says, look, why don't we get rid of these signs? At least between here and here. And one of the city council members said, okay, I understand. Which police officer do you want to let go? And they were like, she was like, what do you mean? He said, those signs generate $80,000 a year for our police department, or for our city. So we would have to let at least one officer go to generate the money, or I
yeah.
mean, because we're going to lose $80,000 out of our budget. That's a police officer.
Hmm.
And she was like, wow, I didn't realize that. And it's
Yeah.
the same thing with those cameras on the street cameras.
Hmm.
My brother-in-law fought Temple Terrace and made them get rid of them. Those cameras were generating like $1 million, $500,000 a year. They were furious about it.
Hmm.
So, so sometimes it's like, they're trying to enforce. It's not that they're necessarily being, total jerks about it, but like, that does generate money. So of course there's quotas. I
Yeah.
mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, there are quotas, like, just to think, even if you're, like you said, they're not specified. Like, you have to give it, but they want that money coming in. So
It's a quota. I don't care what anybody says, and that drove me nuts when I would hear cops say that, dude. Even when I was growing up, quotas don't exist, young man. Really? Okay. Then why do you guys got
but we
whiteboards?
want you to write the tickets.
Yeah. So why do you guys have whiteboards in your briefing room with tally marks under who has the most speeding tickets, tent tickets, et cetera,
Yeah,
et
you're
cetera?
keeping tabs.
Why is the city manager coming into my department when I worked there to bitch out the chief, who would bitch out my lieutenant, who would bitch me out? This is how this conversation started because we're not writing enough tickets for the
Right.
city.
Yeah, they
So
want that money.
now tickets have their place. I'm not stating that they don't. They're there for a reason, but also discretion is there for a reason. Like for example, where I'm at right now. So the other day, I had a guy, officer, works for KT Police Department here in Texas. Dude should never be a cop. He's a fucking sack of shit. So he pulls me over he's 30-mile-an-hour zone, broad daylight, 9:30 in the morning on a Tuesday in a business park. There's a mall, there's a hotel, there's businesses and shit. So before I even get on the roadway from this parking lot 600 feet away, I have his body cam. That's how I know this. He did 60 miles an hour in a 30 on his motorcycle, blew by two cars to pull me over for tent, endangering the lives of everyone. That's reckless driving, right? So I was very polite. I rolled down all my windows, had my hand on the steering wheel, and he was a fucking asshole. Most of the motor guys are. When you choose to do a job like that, now it does have its place. You've made a decision on what type of cop you are. So this dude's 56 years old, never been promoted, scratching shitty tickets still. Okay. Lecturing me, he's like, well, so you don't know the law, like, and I'm like, not, I do. I used to be a cop, I'm a PI. I also use this vehicle for surveillance and stuff too. Not, he's like, that doesn't make it okay. I'm like, I know it doesn't. You asked me why I have it. Long story short, I filed a complaint against him for endangering the public, doing double the speed limit to get me for a very shitty little equipment violation. I would have actually been fired or heavily reprimanded if I did that at either of my other agencies. And as a sergeant, prior sergeant, if one of my guys had done that, they're fucked. They're off the street, dude, for a while, right? I had pursuits canceled for less than that, dude. I chased this guy that shot his fucking brother with a shotgun out in Covelo, and I chased his ass at nighttime, which is very rural. And me and my sergeant and my other buddy, we fucking, I might have, I ended up colliding with this guy's fucking vehicle on the dirt because my brakes locked up. We got in trouble for chasing attempted fucking murder suspect. But out here, I talked to their captain too, Wyotech, whatever. He was like, no, he's good all day. It's justified. And I'm like, what the fuck? It's justified. And, but out here in Texas, they can actually do, and this motorcycle cop told me too. I said, what happens if I don't take care of the tent? I can take you to jail. They actually can in the state of Texas and do arrest people for window tint, rolling a stop sign, no seatbelt. If you're not playing their, not winning the attitude test, yeah, they will. So, and he told me that too. Have it on body cam. But anyway, so to go to that, it didn't meet my that department didn't, his supervising style didn't meet what I had come to know. And you have to develop relationships with people. I was an expert at this point in community policing, community relations, because again, I was always at the schools, the middle school, high school, businesses I visited every fucking day. Everybody in that town, Covelo, had my cell phone number. Even dudes I arrested, obviously, they were snitching for me, right? So I would get calls out there, bro, like, hey, Trent, I heard you were looking for me. I know I have a warrant. Where do you want me to meet you? Like, that's just the type of relationship and respect. But that took years to build, man. Years.
Right.
Years to fucking build that shit. They also have to trust you too, that you're not going to snitch them out when they're fucking snitching, right? So there's a whole dynamic to that whole thing. I just oversimplified the fuck out of it. It was a lot of work. And a lot of guys can do it. I'm not special by any fucking means. But so he was doing shit, and yeah, long story short, I was so fucking miserable there, and I was so burnt that I decided to. I also at this point in time had a huge break in my mind, and what they don't talk, PTSD, right? So like it's very frowned upon to talk about in cop world, just like it is to snitch on other cops when you're a cop, but it's very taboo. You don't talk about it. You don't get help. Otherwise you're a pussy. Some of my friends that were in justified at kill people and stuff, justified, they got all fucked up. And my lieutenants, one of them was Andrew Porter, was calling one of my best friends a pussy in front of me and other guys. He's fucking being a bitch. He actually texted that guy when he was off of work on health stress leave for multiple shootings and crazy shit he got into, and he had worked with me some in Covelo, and said, "Hey, I need you to come back. Like, we're short staffed. I don't want this toxicity to spread and people think they could just go out and leave." Legit text message of that shit, bro. Like, have it. So so it's very taboo, and you're not supposed to do it. You're less than a man, according to a lot of these guys. But these are the dudes that would go home and get drunk, blacked out drunk 7 nights a week. They would hit their wives, who would not report it officially. A couple tried to. That's how they medicate, right? Or drugs. One of my buddies that is around my age, he overdosed on heroin in the sheriff's office when I worked there, when I was living in Covelo, in his home, in his bathroom, because he was doing fucking heroin. That's how he medicated. They wouldn't let him get time off of work. He begged for it because he saw a lot of shit too, and they said, "Nope, tough shit, dude. We're short staffed." So he decided to do what he did. And anyway, so I saw one thing, like at the police department that it wasn't even a big deal, man. Like, somebody fucking like died in my hands, which I've had happen before. It wasn't a big deal at all. And I'd seen so many dead people at that point in like the craziest ways you can think of. It was very just normal for me. But for whatever reason, it tipped the ship, and all this shit fucking hit me at once. It's like the cumulative whatever they talk about. So I went to my lieutenant. I'm like, "Bro, I'm all fucked up, dude. I gotta go. Like, I gotta take some time off the street." And he told me in his office, he's like, "Well, he's like, what the fuck?" He's like, "You're gonna fuck your career, bro. You're gonna go out on a mental health thing right now." And I said, "I just need some fucking time. What the fuck?" And he was my friend. This is why we talked like this. So he's like, "Do you understand what you're doing right now? Like, you're potentially ruining your fucking entire career." And I was like, "I don't really give a fuck anymore, bro." And I didn't. I was so miserable. And like, so I went out on stress leave. Behind my back, he was telling my subordinates that I was a pussy. And I had the human resources lady calling me saying, "Trent, I need a doctor's note stating you can feed and water your dog," because at this point the city had bought him. Otherwise, we're going to come take him. So I had made a decision at that point that I was going to stop being a cop altogether. And I had listed my house for sale. I was dating a girl in Orlando at the time, so I was going to move to Florida and just do something else with my life. I was like, I have experience. I have a degree. Fuck this shit. This whole county's fucked up and corrupt. And so I go back to work. I had reapplied at the sheriff's office again because my plan was to go work there until my house sold, just because it was so bad at the police department, so fucking much worse. I was going to go out into the woods in Covelo again, chill there, away from everybody, the administration, for hopefully no more than like a month. And I thought the hiring thing was going to be quick. But so I put in an app. They scheduled me for an interview. My lieutenant found out about it. He asked me about it. I was like, I don't know. But at the time, I actually had pulled my app because I had made a firm decision that, like, dude, I'm just going to, never mind. I pulled my app from the sheriff's office. I didn't even do the interview. And I'm like, I'm out altogether. So long story short, he stopped talking to me for 2 fucking weeks because he still thought I was going to go back to the sheriff's office, and we worked a shift together. So he was telling my subordinate to come give me orders, which made my subordinate very uncomfortable. And I said, "This won't last very long because I'm going to quit as soon as my fucking house sells, bro. And I'm going to Florida. So fuck all of you." But I got along really fucking well with those guys. But yeah, at the end of the 2 weeks, I got called into the chief's office, and there was the chief, my lieutenant, and Karen, the bitch from hell from Human Resources, that was harassing me about my dog. And the chief was like, "Trent, you're not happy here." I said, "Nope." And he said, "Well, you're still a probationary employee." The probation period there's like 18 fucking months, man. It was 1.5 years. It was wild. So we don't have to give you a reason. You're getting let go, but we're going to give you a memo of reasons why. Trent, I still have the shit, dude. It's like Trent failed to walk his canine downtown when he got asked to. Trent completed an online certification, but failed to complete it in a timely manner. Like, just little bullshit, bro. No policy violations, no law violations. I was like, great, fuck you, dude. Shortly after that, I started my Confessions of an Ex-Cop YouTube channel and blasted everything I knew about these fucking guys. And, it wasn't, just to clarify, I never saw dudes personally ripping people off, unjustifiably beating the fuck out of people, doing crazy shit. Otherwise, I would have reported it. But it's not that type of situation. So people are like, why didn't you report it? It's like, well, first of all, I did try. I had a long conversation with the captain who didn't give a fuck. He didn't care. The sheriff too. And they didn't care. And I can't go above that. Nobody gives a fuck. So then right after that, that lieutenant that, was involved in my termination, got fired for sexually harassing pretty hardcore a female officer there that was my subordinate. He also got another girl's phone number during an IA. He put his sergeant in that was 25 years old. He is 50 and married with kids. Ended up fucking her, hooking up with her from the IA. So he's doing the IA. She's a witness to the IA. Yeah, get your number down. Later, go fuck her, right? And
what's an IA?
Internal Affairs Investigation.
Internal Affairs. Okay.
Yeah. So so his sergeant had done something he wasn't supposed to. This girl was a witness to it. So the lieutenant is doing the investigation.
Right.
His name's Derek Hendry, the lieutenant, and he's all over fucking Google too. And so he gets her number and goes and hooks up with her. He called me, Trent, if my wife asks, I'm at your house, right? Then some of his informants came forward once he had been terminated, so he got fired. And also, right when they let me go, like a dude quit, like people quit, and they transferred out. That department like went to shit really quick, and then he gets fired. And then some of his old informants come forward and say, hey, he used to rape me on duty. He would steal my fucking meth and heroin, because his and looking back, his prime informants were young, impressionable girls. I'm talking like early mid-20s, bro.
Right.
That are new users for meth and heroin, right? Because they get hooked up. It's that shit's fucking. Dude, I've seen in Covelo some like really attractive women. They get hooked up with the wrong dude, and then you see the years progress. And then, dude, they don't even recognize them anymore. They're missing their fucking hair. They have pop marks all over their face. They've been in and out of jail a million times. They've been passed around at this point by like 87 different dudes, him and his friends. And so that's the people that he would have for his snitches, right? But they were starting to come forward. And then a neighboring agency did a search warrant on his house and seized his fucking electronic devices and all kinds of shit. But check this out. The crimes themselves happened in Mendocino County, okay? So they did the search warrant, and this is all within the last couple of years, man. They forwarded it to Willits Police Department, which is the department I worked at, who forwarded it to the local DA's office, because that's where the jurisdiction of the crimes, right? But they had an outside agency do it, which is very common for potential bias, right? Yeah.
Right.
Guess who's still not been in any fucking court proceedings? Him. Why? Who's one of his really close friends? The fucking DA there. And it's crazy, dude. We had that police chief I told you about, and that his buddy that was a sergeant at the PD kicked down a fucking hooker's hotel room door in the middle of the night, sexually fucking assaulted her and all kinds of shit. He got fired, caught a case, got a felony now. That town's fucked up, dude. And so I started my YouTube channel. People are like, oh yeah, there's no way, Trent. And then all these things with these guys start fucking happening. They're like, oh shit. The other thing too is that RICO case. So in 2018, I was working in Covelo, and a guy that I later became friends with was rolling through Mendocino County, prior business executive, and he's also a movie producer. And he gets pulled over by two dudes that are no patches, no name tags, unmarked fucking car. Sorry, this was December, I think, of 2017. They searched his shit, no probable cause, no warrant, no nothing. They said they were ATF agents, right? He had 3 pounds of weed because at the time he was, he's a business guy. He was trying to start a legitimate fucking weed business. He had different strains and shit that he was trying to do stuff with. It was 3 fucking pounds though. Even then it was still a misdemeanor. So they took his weed, didn't give him any paper, no citation, no court dates. And he was actually a prior cop too for 5 years in San Antonio, Texas, back in the day.
He didn't realize while this was happening, something's not right.
He did. Yeah. Very quickly. He's like, what the fuck? He's like, who are you guys? And they're like, oh, ATF for sure. Long story short, with that case, it's part of the RICO investigation. So he named, one of the guys' names was Huffaker, who was a PD cop for a agency just to the south of Mendocino County. And this was like right on the county line, but it was in Mendocino County. The other guy he identified was Bruce Smith, who at the time ran the Comet, which is a marijuana unit for the sheriff's office that I worked at. So those two dudes. And so then his name's Zeke Flatten, the guy that got pulled over. So Zeke calls the sheriff's office like, dude, I just got fucking robbed in your county. They didn't believe him. He got fucked around for a while, and then he had to get the media involved, who started harassing the sheriff's office there. And it was just a bunch of denies. They're like, there's no way, blah, blah, blah. And so he called the ATF too. He's like, hey, did you guys fucking roll me? So they started putting pressure on the sheriff's office there. And then when the ATF got involved is when Huffaker's partner, JC Tatum, that also worked for Roanoke Park Police Department, where they both worked, the neighboring county, finally types up a report for the stop. They said 30 pounds of weed, even though it was only 3. The undersheriff at the time, Randy Johnson, he lied and said like, oh yeah, this is this guy's fucking trafficking, and he called Zeke too to talk to him about it. He's like, yeah, we got you on video. He's like, great, where the fuck is the body cam? So long story short with that, there's guys at the sheriff's office there involved. It's been going to court for fucking years now. Both those Roanoke Park guys got fired. They've been snitching too. The investigation's still ongoing, but it involves the prior sheriff, Tom Allman, that hired me, under his undersheriff, Randy Johnson, Bruce Smith, that ran the marijuana unit at the time, and some other fucking cops there. It's still ongoing, but they have a lot of fucking evidence against those dudes. The other thing is too, Randy Johnson, the undersheriff, when I was a deputy there, this just brought back to me. When I was a deputy, his house got hit twice, 2 separate occasions. Once was the DEA. The second time was when I still worked there. There was a fire at his house. Okay. So fire guys showed up to it, and he was the undersheriff at this time. Firefighters show up and they go to his house. Oh fuck, it's the undersheriff's house. Holy fuck, there is a shitload of fucking weed here. Just growing, right? So they call Tom Allman, and the marijuana unit shows up. 2 of my friends were in the unit at that time. And there's one, so he lived on a compound, the undersheriff did, right? It was just a circle. It wasn't a circle, but it was a little compound. He had his house, his brother's house, and I think like their parents maybe, but all within close proximity. It wasn't like 200 acres. It was like maybe like a couple acres, but you could see
right.
one way in and one way out only of the property, one driveway. So these dudes show up, and two of my friends that were on the unit at the time, I'm like, bro, what was up with the weed there? He's like, dude, there was a bunch of fucking weed, but he said there were so big ass plants that were hanging over the fucking fence to the driveway as you fucking drive up into his property. So it's like, he can't deny that shit was being grown there, right? So the sheriff at the time showed up and told them, you guys say anything about this, like you're basically fucking fired. Like, no. And so they were basically sworn to secrecy. And the undersheriff, his brother, was the one that caught the case for that, because he's the undersheriff, right? So
Right.
It could have been his weed too. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, it's on his property still. He's seeing it driving in and out. And this is such a long history with this county, bro. Like the DA before that was there when I was in high school, Norman Vroman, he's all over Google too. The feds did a fucking warrant. We're going to do a warrant on his personal house because he had a fat fucking weed grow on his property, and he was stealing fucking guns that they would take for cases and shit. 3 days before they hit his spot, because he was going to go to prison, he had a heart attack and fucking died. So it's crazy. That whole place is its own fucking movie, dude. Like multiple movies. They actually wrote 2 books about the town that I worked in Covelo. One of them's $1,500. It's called Genocide in Medetta, and the other one's called Kings Around Valley, which is a loose fictionalized tale of the Shannon Barney, the old lieutenant, and the wife swap and shit. Somebody wrote a story about those fucks. So, but it's a crazy place, man. But it goes back generations, man. Like even when I was growing up there, because it's so small and rural, and everybody knows everybody. You hear all these stories, and it's like everybody knew them. But then when you get into the cop world, the stories then become true, and you start to figure out how they become true and what happens. So, like one of my prior sergeants, man, he this is before my time, but he gets tasked with this call, this assignment. So that cop that I was telling you about, Shannon Barney, that was living in Covelo at the time, that was a sergeant that supervised the crew out there, the two that killed themselves. So he gets a citizen in Covelo calls in and say, "Hey man, I got Shannon Barney, this lieutenant, this sergeant guy, in his fucking weed farm because he grew weed out there. It was common knowledge. I have it on. It was like video or photographs. Files the complaint, and one of the old sergeants, for whatever reason, gets tasked with doing the investigation on that. And it was legit as fuck. That sergeant called him when he heard about it and said, "Dude, do not fuck me over." He was all crying and drunk and shit. And he submitted the case up to through the chain of command. It was all legit. Disappeared into the fucking night, man. So it's all about weed there, dude. Because you're pulling over cars sometimes, especially when it was at its peak. $250,000, $500,000 fucking cash in the fucking trunk. A lot of people moving weight. Dude, I was pulling over fucking U-Hauls. Bull. That's where all the cartel guys drive, right? When you see a U-Haul coming out of the fucking valley, out of Covelo, down onto the main highway 101, it's filled with fucking weed 900% of the time. Thousands of pounds of fucking processed, right? How easy is that and it was for these dudes, to fucking take, okay, you got 1,000 pounds in the back of a U-Haul. You got two dudes that are from Mexico here illegally. Okay, maybe we only have 400 pounds that they have. You know what I'm saying? And then they take it, they sell it. And through this RICO case, a lot of people have started to come out of the woodwork now. People that are prior growers back when it was a crime that have now become legit, but the fear factor was so huge for these people. Now they're coming up like in other parts of the county. Yeah, we were getting extorted. They came onto our property, dug up our cash, took our fucking weed. No reports, no nothing. But back then it's like, do you want to go? What are you going to do? You're growing illegally. And if you catch a case back then, you can go to prison. So what are you going to do? Call, hey, sheriff. Yeah, one of your guys just came out here and ripped me off my illegal fucking weed grow and implicate yourself? No.
Yeah, I was going to say there were. I remember talking to multiple Mexicans in county jail, which was the U.S. Marshals holdover, and in prison, where they would say they get pulled over by whatever, sometimes whatever, sheriff's deputies, state, the state troopers, and they'd search their car and they go, look, we found, I don't know the amounts, but we found this much heroin on you, and we found this much cash.
Yeah.
Now, in the federal system, they're going to convert this cash to heroin. So you're going to get hit with, a pound of heroin. Mm-hmm. That's a mandatory minimum of 15 years. Yeah. Or I can take the $15,000 or $20,000 in cash, and I can say I only found 2,000, and you'll probably only get 5 years. What do you want me to do? Which one do you want me to put into evidence? And they go, put the $2,000 in. There you go. Okay, cool. Yours isn't going to come up later, right? You're not going to be mentioning that there's money missing? Nope, absolutely not. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then they just walk off with the money. Yeah. Or they take half the heroin, mm-hmm. or whatever it was, and they'd still arrest them, but you're either getting 10, 15 years or 5. What do you want it to be?
Right.
It's like, fuck.
Yeah, no.
This is before body cameras and all that shit.
Well, even they still don't have body cams at the sheriff's office I worked at in 2023. We had watch guard. That wasn't even there when I first started. I used to drive one of those piece of shit fucking old Crown Vics when I first started. Actually, it's a badass car. I would like bomb around in the fucking hills in that thing. It was nuts. But they only had the watch guard, like the dash cam, right? Which is for vehicle pullovers. That doesn't show you shit when you're in homes, when you're doing fucking whatever. They still do not have, the sheriff refuses to get them. I'm like, of course. That's a red flag, bro, because I actually like them, because what it did for me when I went to the PD, because we had them there, is people would come in and complain about somebody, one of my guys, perfect, or me, then my lieutenant can easily pull up the fucking body cam. Not that body cams show the whole fucking picture, man. That shit drives me nuts too. There's so much shit sometimes, dude, that like the public doesn't understand. Some dudes we were getting shooting on site, depending. based on what they had just done, their fucking criminal history, this, and this. And that's why sometimes the media sees these videos like, oh, he wasn't even armed. It's like, dude, you do not know what you're talking about. Yes, sometimes it is not justified. That's what we see too. Yeah, of course. But I'm just saying, but they are more of a benefit than a hindrance, in my opinion. And it's a red flag when you're not wanting to fucking do some shit like that. So, also while I was there, this started in 2019, man. This is the biggest fucking issue I had, the biggest case I had an issue with. The other lieutenant that I told you was a prior Norteño gang member, sold meth and all this shit. He lived on the coast. So there was a child pornography. So for where we worked in Sacramento, which is like the northeastern part of California, they have ICAC there, Internet Crimes Against Children. They monitor all the child pornography being watched, downloaded, fucking sold online, whatever. So they get a hit. They will obtain the whatever is being watched on that device, the images and stuff like that, and send it to the county of jurisdiction. So in 2019, they had a hit in Mendocino County. 2 dudes get assigned to the fucking case at the sheriff's office. They do a search warrant for the IP address. Comes back to the lieutenant's house. That's fucking weird. Let's do a search warrant to the internet provider. Okay, it's Comcast under the lieutenant's name. Okay, that's fucking weird. Who lives in the lieutenant's house at the time? The lieutenant, his wife, his at the time it was like his 12 or 13-year-old daughter, and his at the time he was 18-year-old son. Okay. So let's do some common sense here. It's more than likely going to be the lieutenant or his son, okay? And no, This is not anybody pulling up in front of their house, jacking their Wi-Fi and watching kid porn on the shit, okay? So I had dumbass people tell me that's not how this process works. So in these types of cases, which get done all the time, it usually takes on the higher end a month. So you get that shit, you verify the residence, time is of the essence then. You're going to want to go fucking hit the house, seize the cell phones, the laptops, the fucking TVs, whatever has the ability to watch or look at those types of images, okay? So they get the information, it's the lieutenant's house. They go to the sheriff. The sheriff says, I want nothing to fucking do with that. Take it to the DA. Takes it to the DA, and then it disappears for 2 fucking years. 2 years. Again, this was in 2019, September 25th of 2019 to be exact. And so after I left cop world, I started my Confessions of an Ex-Cop channel. I did a video on this in 2021, November, almost 2 years later. I said, dude, what the fuck is going on with this case? It should not take 2 years, bro. These things are done in a matter of a month. It's very quick. They're very easy.
Right.
It's not that complicated. And they'd already verified where the house is at. You're supposed to go do a search warrant for the residence at that point. So I did my video on it. I said, this is who's involved. This is what's gone on. The sheriff ain't doing shit. This is a 2-year case. What the fuck? This is clearly a cover-up. So 2 months, almost to the day after I do that video, after it's been 2 years, Sacramento magically finalizes the case. Oh, we're done now. It's all good. Yep. We found out it was not the lieutenant. It's his son, who was 23 then at that point. Or 22. Sorry. Yeah, that's it. And then his son catches a fucking case, which is still ongoing from 2019 now. So it's a 4-year child porn case. But so Matt Kendall, the sheriff, comes and does an article after my video comes out. And he's like, yeah, so I had initially cleared my lieutenant after 3 days in 2019. He was cleared. He was all good. Actually, I didn't clear him. Sacramento did. They cleared my lieutenant after 3 days. In November, they kicked it off to them, I think, November 19th, 2020.
Well, if they cleared him, then what took so long to indict the kid?
Right. So I'm going to get to this, right? So it's that he didn't realize that he fucked up his own life so many times because he got put in that position right in the middle of the RICO case, dude. The main sheriff, Tom Allman, retired early, halfway through his fucking term, when Zeke Flatton got pulled over and robbed on the side of the highway. The main sheriff fucking retires right at the beginning of that, gives the job to Matt Kendall, who had not that long before that been a regular fucking sergeant. Okay? he wanted to distance himself, right? So he says in this article, I cleared him after 3 days, and so it was all good. Well, first of all, he should have put him off work fucking immediately. Number one. Number two, they never hit his house to do a search warrant on the house itself. It was remote shit only. And so in my mind, what you just said, okay, you clear your lieutenant after 3 days, process of elimination. Who's probably going to be next? The 13-year-old girl? I doubt it. The wife? I doubt it. Because this was like legit kid porn, bro. I'm talking like, under 10 years old.
Right.
Right? So next logical choice, his son. The funny thing about this is, or tragic thing is, or that goes speaks to the corruption, he cleared his lieutenant after 3 days in November 2019. Then later in the beginning of 2021, he was allowing his son to go through the hiring process at the sheriff's office, knowing full fucking well he was the next logical suspect. So I do my video. Shortly after that, he gets washed from the fucking program at the sheriff's office. Then in this latest article, and two years later, I cleared my lieutenant after 3 days. But then he fucks up and he says, SAC finally concluded it. And the IA, the Internal Affairs Investigation of my lieutenant, is finally closed. And we now determined it was his son. So he admits in there that whole 2 years, his lieutenant was actually still a fucking suspect. And that IA was open that whole fucking time, meaning he should not have been allowed to go to work, but he never took a day off. Come to find out, I found out how he really cleared his lieutenant is he looked at his watch guard footage and matched the times with when the kid porn was being watched at his house. And he's like, yeah, it couldn't have been him. All right. Yeah. Okay, bro. So his kid fucking takes this rap. In my opinion, I still think it was him, and his kid's taking the fucking hit on this. I could be wrong. I don't have proof of that. But what I do know is that's never how that goes under any circumstances. Matt Kendall tried to blame COVID. Oh, this is why it took longer. No. If they can clear your lieutenant in 3 days, it should take another 3 days to clear the fucking son, dude, or to say if it's him or not.
Right.
And that was still before COVID. COVID didn't really hit until like fucking March of 2020. So you got like 4 months almost to make this fucking happen, dude. Again, this does not take this long. So he was blaming excuses. And then his kid, lieutenant's son, got a letter from the DA's office there, mailed to him, a cute little letter in the mail. Hey, man, you're the suspect now in this kid porn case. Can you please, at your convenience, go check yourself into the Mendocino County Jail? Book in. It will be an immediate book and release. No bail, no nothing. Just go take your little picture. So he does. Gets a letter. Can you imagine that? Like, you get it, like, for your shit, you could just get a fucking letter in the mail from the DA, like, Mr. Cox, can you please just go check yourself in, and then we'll get released right away. We'll do a court date later. No, that never fucking happens, especially for kid porn, bro. You're coming to your house, and you deserve to be in a wood chipper, honestly, for that shit. But it's like, checks himself in, and they never do a press release. That was my other biggest thing, because it's a felony. Well, it's a wobbler, but you charged it as a felony. So the jail did a fucking error and listed his booking shit as a misdemeanor, because I did a secondary video once I found out it was him, and he had been booked in, but the sheriff's office didn't say shit. And then Matt Kendall comes out and like, oh yeah, the jail messed up. We didn't do one because of this, and that. Anyway, his kid just pled not guilty initially, and recently took a plea deal for 2 years of probation. That's it.
No registering.
So this is the thing too. So, okay, first of all, that is a minimum 16 month to a higher end 3 year in fucking prison for that crime. Okay.
Right.
He gets 0 incarceration time, no jail, no prison, 2 years. You know what happens to fucking chomos in prison, man? They get the fucking stabbed the fuck up, right? So probation only. Registration, so that warrants a mandatory registration for life. But in his final sentencing, so the deal's already done, but his final sentencing is next month in October 12th. 17B motion is on the table, meaning that upon successful completion of his probation, 2 years, he can have that felony dropped to a misdemeanor on his record, which means he only has to register for 10 years at that point. So, deal of a fucking lifetime, but according to Matt Kendall, 0 preferential treatment with a letter in the mail, badass fucking plea deal because he's the son of a lieutenant. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a fucking detective or anything, but I would say there's some shenanigans. So anyway, I left. I fucking moved to Florida. the sheriff's office continued being fucked up. I had hundreds of people from what I was doing on YouTube, hundreds people I didn't even know, contact me in various ways, beg me to go back and run against Matt Kendall as sheriff. And this was in 2021, I think, or 22. Sorry. But I hadn't planned to do this, and I was going to start a new life over there on the East Coast. So it was so late in the game. Thousands of people had already sent in their vote. This was literally like 2 weeks before the fucking election at this point. So I had to register as a write-in candidate, meaning my name was not on any fucking ballots. You had to know I was running. I didn't get a chance to campaign. You had to write my fucking name on the ballot if you want to vote for me, right?
Right.
Huge disadvantages. So I fly back, get registered through the fucking county, which is a whole nother corrupt fucking piece of shit. And I didn't even think it was going to be done legit, dude. Even if I had one, I was like, I'm still going to lose regardless. So a lot of people are friends with the sheriff over there. So I'll just say that. But so I campaigned for 1 week. It was like 6 days. I went to as many places in the county as I could, did meet and greets and shit like that. A lot of people already knew me from working in the areas, but also from, because it's small, but also from YouTube. So campaigned for 1 week as a write-in, and I got 20% of the fucking vote, dude. It was crazy. If I would have ran for, and thousands of people, like I said, had already voted. I had so many people hit me up way after the fact. Oh, fuck, I didn't know you were even running. So if I would have ran initially, yeah, I could have still lost for sure, but it would have been very, very fucking close. Very close.
When's he run again?
It's a 4-year situation, dude. So he still has another fucking year and a half, 2 years on the books. I still have people telling me to come back and do it, but I'm like, I can't commit to something that far. I don't even know what I'm doing next month, right? So I can't commit to something that far in the future. It wasn't something I wanted to do though. Like, I mean, I wanted to do it because everybody wanted me to do it, and I was like, the only way to help with this fucking corruption in this fucking fucked up place is try to become one of the main like influential like people in power there, right? To try to assist in getting rid of everything that's there, because I was going to fire fucking like all the lieutenants. They were gone. There's ways to do it even though they're protected. Actually, they're not as protected as the street cop guys. I was going to completely clean house. I had already dudes that I knew that I was going to bring in to fill those positions. I was going to promote some. I had a lot of people that wanted to come work there on the street just because if I would have won. And so I had like a whole fucking plan. And yeah, it just didn't, it didn't fucking work out. Obviously it was a 6 day fucking thing, but yeah, it was pretty interesting experience.
Well, so what, I mean, you're not in Florida now. What
Oh
happened?
no. Yeah. My girlfriend and I broke up a while back, and now I'm in Texas in the Houston area, and I'm a private investigator. I run my own company. So I just been, pretty much doing this and following. People still hit me up all the time from Mendocino County because like a lot of these guys, like I said, are catching cases now. They're getting fired. That Willits Police Department that I used to work for, I just did a recent video on them. They are, holy shit. They just like terminated all their dudes. The chief's forced to resign, the one that terminated me. They have like 3 total cops for that whole department now. It's just, it's a long story, man. But yeah, that whole county is so riddled with corruption. It's really, it deserves its own, like I said, its own movie for the stories and the shit that have gone on there. Like not just in my time, but even before that. Dudes that got fucking like tortured by some of these cops back in the day that still will not report it even to the feds because they're so fucking scared. To like, hey, tell us where your fucking money's at, and because everyone's burying it. You bury your shit. They
Right.
deal with a lot of gold and silver too. Like growers, they deal with precious metals. That's also that's very common. Yeah, man, lots of people coming up against those guys now, witnesses and people that have been victims of the past. But it's interesting too because I've gotten a lot of people that have told me, well, oh, they're just ripping off fucking people that are already committing crimes. I'm like, people actually say that shit. I'm like, well, yeah, but dude, 2 wrongs don't make a fucking right, man. What the fuck?
Yeah, listen,
Yeah.
absolute power corrupts absolutely. So that's not going to stick. That facet is going to run through every vein, so
Yeah.
and you've seen, you see these guys on some of these cops on TikTok and shorts and stuff and on videos where it's like you're like some of them are just out of control. They're pulling over a traffic stop, screaming at old ladies and
Yeah.
just regular people on a traffic stop because I didn't pull over right away. I went on a side street, and they run over, they're yanking open car doors and screaming at people. It's like, bro, it's a traffic stop. Like, I was,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like, what are you doing? It's some people just shouldn't be cops.
Well, and I agree with you. I've seen that type of shit, right? Um, and it's people that, right, they shouldn't have been hired. They got into law enforcement for the wrong reason. They don't have the right
Temperament.
personality, temperament. They don't. The thing that benefited me is, and what a lot of cops don't have the ability to do, is to put themselves in other people's shoes, because everybody to them is to not okay, not everybody. I mean, like some, not all of the guys that I worked with, especially the older generation, everybody that's a criminal is a piece of shit. Everybody, dude. You grow weed, piece of shit. You've been arrested, piece of shit. And it's like, they would say that too, they think of people, criminals, as like less than human. Not all cops. I just want to say this over and over again. It's not all fucking cops, but some of the guys that I did see this with. And in my mind, I always thought about it like this, like, and this is why I was as successful as I did in solving real fucking crimes. And because I treated people with respect, but I could put myself in their shoes. And it's like, dude, if you grew up like they did, you're not that that's always an excuse, but dude, you're already fucked from the get go, man. Like, you
Right.
have no opportunity. Your brother, your uncle, your dad have all been to prison 18 million times. Your mom's strung out on fucking dope. Nobody gives a fuck about you. Your other uncle fucking molested your ass when you were fucking 8. Um, you get into drugs at a young age, and it's like, so what I always thought of it is like, we're not all the fucking same, man. We're not all one being. Like, we all have different brain chemistry. We grow up differently. We have different experiences, perceptions, values, and morals. And people really think that we're gonna like just not have people that break the fucking law ever. Like, everyone's just supposed to be fucking perfect. Like, no. And so the problem is, a lot of cops take that shit personally. Like this fucking nerd out here that pulled me over for window tint, that was very offended by my illegal window tint. He was not having it. It like he acted like it insulted his mom. You know what I'm saying? Personally. So, but you have cops that do that, like, that they'll get really mad when you break a basic ass fucking law that they probably commit themselves, man. Like highway patrol, they're big on speed and intent and DUIs and all that shit. Dude, I remember one day I was driving to work in my cop car. These two dudes, 7 a.m., racing each other on the highway, 120 miles an hour. I only got one of them pulled over. Both of them were off duty highway patrol guys that had just gotten off of fucking work. And, it's like, obviously I let that fucking guy go. What am I going to do? But, which is a thing. Cops give cops breaks. It's a discretionary thing at the end of the day. But, people can think what they want. It's just how it is. But it's like, also, I was a deputy. We don't write tickets. I don't even know where the fuck my ticket book was. So, the hypocrisy is what bugged me, because that same dude the next day on shift is going to be giving somebody for a ticket for going 15 over and probably lecturing his ass. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that was always a huge problem for me, was dudes that I was seeing doing the same shit off duty, as on. That's why I said I never got anybody in trouble for fucking anything that I was doing myself. It's like, you can't do it, dude. So it's, and yeah, sometimes they got fucking bullied in high school and shit, and they power trip when they get the gun and the badge, and if they don't have the life experience, then those are the ones that beat the fuck out of people unjustifiably, shoot people when they shouldn't. Well, also because they don't know how to fucking handle themselves. They're
Right.
fat. Uniform looks like shit. Command presence is non-existent. They've never taken MMA or fucking boxing, wrestling, or anything. And some guys will size them up, and they're going to immediately go to their fucking gun. Right now, yeah, there was a lot of times I would have been justified on paper so many times, so many fucking times, dude. I lost count shooting somebody. And but I knew that the reasons when I didn't for those is like, I realized, I in my mind, I knew it wasn't right. I said, I can articulate that I don't need to do this because of my abilities. You know what I'm saying? So, but some guys don't do that shit, and those are the ones that wind up in the media. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
Um. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, you think there's anything else we haven't gone over?
No, I mean, that's even still an abridged version, but for the most part, that's that's the main things there. Yeah.
Right. And you have two channels though right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I have the Confessions of an Ex-Cop. That's the main YouTube channel that I started when I was getting out of the cop world, and then my other one I started with my buddy, who was a sergeant at a different police department in my county that got terminated for basically no fucking reason too. So him and I started a podcast together called Two. It's the number two, Fired Cops. We have an Instagram and all that shit. We just started it like, I think in May, but we talk about kind of a conversation you and I are having right now, like what cops actually think, and to kind of, and why they do what they do and the realities of it, the honest opinions, because we're not in that world anymore. We're not gonna get fucking fired again. So to let people know too, civilians, like what's actually going on here, and also cops that again have contacted us that are going through similar shit that we did. It's very common, dude, like very common. And yeah, so those are my two main cop things that I do on the side.
If you decide to run for sheriff again, let me know. We'll do a video on it.
Yeah, hell yeah. You never know.
Hey, I appreciate you guys watching the video. If you liked it, do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you get notified of videos like this. Check out the links in the description box and leave me a comment. Really appreciate it, and I will see you.
I'm originally from Queens, New York, Rockaway Beach, my whole life. I went to grammar school there and then high school. And after high school, I went in the Navy for about 7 years. I was military police, but in the Navy, that's called Master at Arms.
Okay.
I served in Desert Storm, and I became a military police investigator, and then became a instructor for shipboard security engagement tactics. So while I was in the Navy, the Marshal Service was recruiting. They created this program called Operation Shining Star, and it was going after targeting military personnel to join. And of course, I was one of them, and was selected and went into the Marshal Service in 1995.
So how long were you in the
Navy? Almost 7 years. I went in right out of high school in 1988, and I got out of the Navy on a Saturday in June of 95, and on Sunday, June of 95, I was in the Marshal Service. I didn't even have a break of service at all.
Okay.
And went to training in Glencoe, Georgia. And then after that, I went right to Eastern District of New York, Brooklyn, and served almost all of my 25 years there in Brooklyn. In the beginning, I started out as a deputy in working court operations, prisoner transport, serving some like civil process, administrative duties, and doing my little rotations in the warrant squad. So it took a little time, and then I, gravitated right to doing warrants and working the street and doing fugitive investigations. And after some special assignments of protection details and even some high-profile trials, I eventually was right into the warrant squad and did that. I bet your majority of my career is working warrants, and I was lucky enough to be part of the New York, New Jersey Regional Fugitive Task Force, which started right after September 11th and funded by Congress. It's one of the biggest task forces in the nation and still is. And
is that what you like? If you're a police officer, like, a lot of them, ultimately they want to work like homicide, they want to like, that's like, is working the fugitive or the warrant squad, is that like what you like when you join? Is that like that's the goal?
That's it for when you're a deputy marshal with the U.S. Marshals, that's it. That's the pedestal of being in the Marshal Service. I mean, there's so many different divisions and sections, but everybody wants to work fugitive investigation, warrants. You want to be on a task force. I mean, I worked with the greatest cops in the world. When I was in Brooklyn and the city, I worked with NYPD, and, coming from New York and then dealing with everybody in the nation here with different states, there's nothing better than, NYPD detectives. They're like the best. Mm-hmm. And we had dozens of them. We had NYPD sergeants, lieutenants, then we had state police officers, immigration, customs officers there at DHS. We even had relationship with DEA and ATF, even FBI and Secret Service. And we just worked together great. And it's, when you join the Marshal Service, you see it on TV and the movies, everybody wants to work fugitive investigations and track down the worst of the worst out there, and in New York, there's no place better to work the street than there. So I did that for years, and stayed in Brooklyn mainly. And then, I was moving up, with seniority, and then I put in and I took the test and I became a supervisor, back in like 2009, 2010. And, my chief is, great man. He, had a lot of trust and confidence in me, selected me to become the supervisor. I had to do a couple of months in the courthouse, working with everybody in there. And then eventually my chief put me back into the warrant squad. And next thing you know, I'm there supervising now the guys and girls I worked with for years. But it seemed like everybody wanted that. They wanted me back there because I knew what I was doing, and I made things happen. And I did that for almost 10 years. Our warrant squad was part of the New York, New Jersey Regional Fugitive Task Force, which was in Brooklyn, New York City, as well as out in Long Island, which was Nassau and Suffolk County. I was also responsible for that, along with other supervisors. So what happened is, out in Long Island, it was a sub office, and we had deputy marshals rotating through there. Well, we had one young lady who was really interested in doing it, and it was me and another supervisor who selected her to go back there and work with the local officers from Nassau and Suffolk County and Long Island to be full-time on the warrant squad. And she was going to represent the Eastern District, and she was a U.S. Marshal. And this is now the U.S. Marshals. It's our task force.
Right.
We run it.
Okay.
Well, she was doing good for a couple of years.
Right.
And then some of the guys that she gravitated to, they were older and they retired, and that was kind of like her go-to guys. Well, the other guys in the task force, they didn't really take too kindly to her. They would make fun of her, tease her, and then it just started escalating, and then it got into bullying, and then they would blackball her, they would ignore her, they would start messing with her desk. And at one time, she went, you go to go to Costco or BJ's and you get those big plastic tubs of cookies, animal crackers.
Right.
So she would put them on her desk and share it with everybody. Well, one of these task force officers, local cop, urinated in her cookies and left it there. And she knew, you could smell it.
Yeah. Well,
and,
what's the issue? Like, why did they?
Well, it came out, and she was a female.
Right.
And she was, she's an Army veteran. She's a U.S. Marshal. And these guys did not want to take orders or directions from her. They just did not want to deal with her. They wanted to be, it was an all guys group out there.
Right.
And the icing on the cake is she was a lesbian. Right. And she was an open person. She spoke about she was gay, and she had a girlfriend, and they did not want that in their group. They didn't want to be part of that. But this girl, her name's out there, Dawn. She was well known, well liked. The courthouse, everybody in there loved her. She was athletic, played softball, soccer. She participated in everything. She was, a fun person to have around.
How many guys are there here that are doing this? Is it 3 or is it 6? I mean, is there like?
It was up there. It was 4 to 6 guys that were messing with her, and it got to a point where she brought it to my attention, and then I confronted the supervisor that was out there handling those guys, and he just ignored it. He said, suck it up. He's not here to be a babysitter when in fact you're the supervisor.
Right.
You have to babysit some of these people.
And everybody they need to get along. They need to work as a cohesive group.
All the time. And, you have to develop a relationship. You have to be friends. You have to be partners. You have to get along with each other. You have to build something there. I mean, these guys and girls are carrying guns, wearing vests, and working the street, and you're doing a lot of hours. So she would do things and be like, hey, you're not checking in with me. You're not telling me you're doing hits. They would just go and do interviews and arrest people and not even tell her. And she's the team leader. She's the boss. So after these guys found out we spoke to the supervisor out there, they got more enraged. So then they would bully her and argue with her, totally ignore her, and then start teasing her. They would, in any marshal's office you work in, you transport prisoners, and they try to bring their legal work to the cell block.
Right.
And in their legal work is porn books.
Right.
So we would seize that. They would be in a box. Next thing you know, some of these magazines are ending up on her desk, and they're opening up pictures of girls on top of girls. They're playing porn in the office where you hear the moaning, and she's the only woman back there.
Right.
So it's a couple of guys against her. We bring that forward too, and nothing happens, but now it just escalates more and more. Well, there was one task force officer who had Spanish heritage, and he came out and he made her kiss him every morning to say hello. And this is on your team. These are your coworkers. Right. And she just did it all the time and just fell into that, comfort of doing it. And when she told me about it, I was like, are you kidding? You got to be kidding me. Like this, we don't do this. I don't even do that with half my family members, giving kisses hello. So that man at one point grabbed her in the office when she was trying to walk by and started almost groping her and just feeling her up and calling her a sexy bitch.
Right.
And other people saw it and they laughed. She felt embarrassed. She was crying. She was humiliated. She left. So then she called me, and then that was it. I was like, just stay home. And then I confronted the supervisor again, and he now then went and said something to the guys. And it went over the weekend, and that guy was told not to come back. Well, 2 other guys didn't like that. So they showed up on one morning while they were preparing to do a hit, an arrest. And people were like, why are you guys here? You're on a different team. And they were like, oh, we're just here to back you up. So when they went in the house, they get the perp, but Dawn was sitting on another person in the house, just watching.
Right.
And one of those guys walked by and pushed her, shoved her, hit her, like a shoulder to the back.
Right.
And made her stumble. And this gave her a look. And the look was, after she told me, was, we can get to you.
Right.
What are you doing? Why are you talking this stuff? So that moment I took her off the task force, had to go report it to my chief. And she just reported so much more stuff that was happening. And it went up the chain to headquarters at the Marshal Service. And in the beginning, Internal Affairs was going to investigate this. But some other leadership personnel who were over the task force got involved and suggested that they have an investigator come and investigate what was going on there. And it went from these accusations, these complaints, these, charges, to these guys controlling an investigation and investigating themselves. And this executive from the headquarters selected an investigator who was out of New Hampshire, who was part of the task force in New Hampshire, who knew the guys in the task force in New York and Long Island.
Using forgeries and bogus identities, Matthew B. Cox, one of the most ingenious con men in history, built America's biggest banks out of millions. Despite numerous encounters with bank security, state, and federal authorities, Cox narrowly, and quite luckily, avoided capture for years. Eventually, he topped the U.S. Secret Service's most wanted list and led the U.S. Marshals, FBI, and Secret Service on a 3-year chase, while jet-setting around the world with his attractive female accomplices. Cox has been declared one of the most prolific mortgage fraud con artists of all time by CNBC's American Greed. Bloomberg Businessweek called him the mortgage industry's worst nightmare, while Dateline NBC described Cox as a gifted forger and silver-tongued liar. Playboy magazine proclaimed his scam was real estate fraud, and he was the best. Shark in the Housing Pool is Cox's exhilarating first-person account of his stranger-than-fiction story. Available now on Amazon and Audible.
So he investigated it, and it turned from these, an assault, sexual harassment, and, bullying, all these things, to an investigation on office culture, which lasted a couple of months. And the finding in that report was that I was a bad supervisor, and Dawn was the problem that enraged these guys because she was not a good coworker.
Okay.
So, and all these people involved, even they interviewed people that were never even there but were part of the task force, just couldn't stop praising the great work and personalities of these other guys.
Right.
Which we all knew was false. We all knew. You just know, and too many other people were coming and supporting Dawn's allegations. Well, while that was going on, the one task force officer who hit Dawn, shoved her, he found out I was going to a New York Mets baseball game during this investigation. And him and a couple other task force officers made it a point to go to that baseball game, which was in Queens, and it was on Law Enforcement Appreciation Night. And he confronted me at the game, and we got into a big argument, cursing and nose to nose. We were going to fight, and it went on for a couple of seconds, and then it just stopped. I walked away and left, and I reported it to my chief, like, this is what happened. This is going to be, an off-duty incident.
Yeah.
I'm going to get investigated. But so strange that it was Law Enforcement Appreciation Night. There was a bunch of members from the New York City task force office there who witnessed this, and one happened to be the chief of the whole task force. So the next day, he made it a point to remove that task force officer from the task force. But he was still able to work with them, but he couldn't be in the courthouse anymore, couldn't be in the office space. So the results come out about the office culture investigation.
Right.
So now my chief is livid. He's like, this is insane. First of all, I wasn't even there when these things were happening, so how can I be a bad supervisor? And when I did hear about it, I reported it and got involved and confronted the supervisor. So my chief and the marshal then argue with the leadership from the marshal's headquarters. And they go through the whole list of complaints. They're like, you investigated all this and went through this stuff and found nothing at all. You're going to let this deputy marshal, female, tell you that somebody peed in her food.
Right. And
you're going to ignore it. Well, one of the people on that telephone call said he didn't know about that. And now that we bring that to his attention, he's going to instruct Internal Affairs to investigate that specific incident, just that one, right? Not these other ones that she had listed. So you wait a month or two, Internal Affairs comes into the office, which they're terrible. They're absolutely horrible. They're the people that cannot get into the warrant squad. They're jealous. They're angry. They're tools.
Right.
So they come in. Now, their first person they want to interview is the guy who tried to fight me at the baseball game, who's no longer on the task force. So now we're a year after this all started from the office culture investigation. Right. And he comes in and they sit him down in Internal Affairs out in Long Island. They come up and they ask him, do you know why you're here? And he says no. And they're like, well, is there anything you would like to tell us? And he goes, yeah, I would. He goes, Bobby Lediger is a racist. He covers up crime. He's the biggest problem in the task force. This is a year later now. This never came out during the office culture investigation. I wasn't even mentioned.
Is this guy black or Hispanic?
Oh, no, he's Greek. He's Greek.
Okay.
From Long Island, white guy.
Right.
And we all hung out. Like, we were all worked together, went out to the bars together.
Well, that's the worst thing you can say.
That's it.
He's racist.
Racist.
Yeah.
So then him and his co-worker partner, who was on the task force, kind of agreed. Right. And then he interviewed him. Yeah, he's a racist. He says the N-word all the time. And everybody knows about it. And we're only coming forth now because of how much damage Bobby Lediger caused to the task force by having him removed. I'm like, okay. So this goes on. So now they try to create scenes or scenarios or incidents where I said specifically the N-word. And one was during an arrest. And they said that, and one of the other guys who were one of the bad actors in this tased the perp when we were arresting him. And it was a white guy.
Right.
And in the past, they had stolen a car. We got into a car chase. It was an arrest in Long Island at a gas station. And they were like, yeah, Bobby Lediger went up to the white girl. And there was a black guy passenger in the car. And there was supposedly a white girl in the back seat. And said, that's what you get for dating a black guy, the N guy.
Yeah, yeah.
But so odd is that the white girl on scene was Dawn, the marshal.
Right.
Who was in my car during this. But Internal Affairs didn't want to hear that. But they were using that scenario, that incident.
Right.
But what's more strange is that one of the guys, the marshals, tased the perp who was getting arrested. So if you would have pulled that taser incident report, you would know the full investigation of that, what it was. So you could see all the players there, but they didn't.
Right.
So they came out and they were like, yeah, we hear that he says the N-word at parties. You know, we're out at bars with him and it makes us feel uncomfortable now. And we have to tell you this now because it's so bad.
Because it took us a year to come up with this.
Longer.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It was going on for years, but but then they started shooting themselves in the foot because then the supervisor goes, yeah, I think he does say the N-word. Well, you're a supervisor. Why didn't you report me instantly when you heard that?
Right.
So you're a dereliction of duty. These other guys are not supervisors. They're investigators. So they'll play that. So they investigate me and they're like, you're a racist. Then they said one of my sources of information, an informant, was married to my wife. And that's why he's my informant. And
What?
Yeah.
One of your informants was married to your wife?
This is what the bad actor said about me. That I was associated with a felon.
Right.
And he and I owned a gym together.
Okay.
And that same guy is my informant. And prior to that, he had been married.
When you said married.
No, this was a story they made up.
Okay.
That he was married to my wife.
So your current wife, your current wife was his ex-wife.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. All lie. Total lie.
Right.
And
well, you would think that would be easily discounted, proven.
Oh, no. They were questioning me about that. Everything. And they were like, you let your informant live at your house. He was married to your wife. They're having sex. I'm like, this Internal Affairs. These are my own people asking me these questions. So what are you trying to get at? So it's all lies.
Right.
And you can easily find it. The best is that they said I owned a gym with him. I don't go to the gym.
Right.
I'm like, look it up. Do these reports. There's no financial gains here. Nothing. Lies that people were making about me. Other cops were lying about me, but we're not going to go after them.
Right.
And
well, that's really the culture now, isn't it? That you can basically blatantly lie and accuse people. And then when you find out that that's untrue, nothing happens to the person that lies.
Nothing at all. Right. And now, what if a famous quote we would say to people when we were investigating to a fugitive, and you find and like, oh, we're going to charge you with harboring a fugitive, aiding and abetting, and lying to law enforcement. If you lie to me, I'm a federal agent. You go to jail for 5 years.
Right.
Well, what about these task force officers who were deputized that are lying to Internal Affairs about another government official? Nothing ever happens to them. I mean, these people should have been arrested and charged, but no. And Internal Affairs would just turn around and be like, well, we got to investigate the accusation that's brought forth. But it's a lie.
Right.
And we've told you that. So this goes on, and I completely deny everything, and there's no evidence to show I did anything. But some people from the Marshal Service, the Internal Affairs investigates it, and then they push it forward, and they write up their report, and they cherry pick the words.
Right.
And it's all selective and opinionated. And then we have what's called a proposing official. This person turns around and says, I don't believe Bobby Lediger. I believe these 4 to 5 other people that you are a racist, and you use the N-word hundreds to thousands of times a day. Even though the only people saying you do it
are these 4 guys that I had.
Four bad actors
Right.
that are originally named in the complaint of sexual harassment. And even though you have outstanding evaluations, you have awards, and you work with the most diversified group of people, and there's no complaints at all about you. Nothing ever brought up. You don't have any complaints from any people you arrested, anybody in the public, nothing. We believe them. You're a liar, and we're going to fire you. And so this was in 2017. I was proposed removal. I had to hire a lawyer because we have no union, and we have some silly association, the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association. It's a joke. And I have a private attorney. It costs you a lot of money.
Right.
And I go before this deciding official now. We have like 2 months to prepare. I collected hundreds of letters of support. My background was perfect. And I go before this woman who's a chief and plead my case to her and present evidence of those people being racist
Right.
and sexist and degrading and lying about me. But what's so strange is that before I get to do that and sit down with her, the day before, she oddly gets a phone call from a civilian who wants to report to her that I steal cell phones from people I arrest, and I gave her one, and that I'm a bad person.
Okay.
It's very confusing, right? So this woman was the ex-girlfriend of one of the guys I worked with in the task force, who was friends with these bad actors in the task force, rode a motorcycle with them. Well, one of those men, gave her their name and phone number to the deciding official,
Right.
which is all secret. This is all private.
Which should tell you something's wrong right
right
there.
off the bat.
Right.
And then that I stole a cell phone and gave it to her. So you're in possession of stolen property.
Right. Does she have a cell phone? Did she
Yeah.
provide the cell phone? Did she?
Well, this is even better. That deciding official tells us, and my lawyer's like, you have to report that to Internal Affairs.
Right.
So now I have a new Internal Affairs investigation on me while I'm getting proposed to be fired.
Right.
And now we move forward towards our hearing. Talk to her for a few hours, and the woman is just blown away. Like, she can see it.
Yeah.
She's like, this is pure retaliation. This is horrible.
So are you allowed to present witnesses? Or you just...
No, it's just me and her with my lawyer.
Dawn couldn't show up and say, this is what's going on?
No, but Dawn wrote a letter in support of me. That's the best you can do, is that we have letters of support to refute that. And she read every one. She listened to me. And she just asked for some additional supporting documents that my lawyers provided. But keep in mind, I'm being proposed to be fired.
Right. Which is a big deal for
a federal agent.
Yeah, federal agent to be fired. Yeah.
I lost my gun, my badge, everything, but I still had my title, and I have to go to work every day in administrative roles.
Right.
While I'm being like waiting. Yeah. So this is in 2017, and now we leave, and it was on Good Friday. And when we left, the lady was like, have a happy Easter. I knew I was going to win.
Yeah. Okay.
And that she would run. And it was like a week later, and she cleared me of everything. It was unsubstantiated. But keep in mind, I don't get my attorney fee money back.
Right.
I don't get any personal money I spent. Nothing. You don't get nothing back. It's just stress on you. And now I have an open internal affairs investigation for supposedly giving this woman a cell phone. So now I have IA looking at me again after I just got
Cleared.
Cleared.
Yeah.
So that goes now, that's April 2017.
But are you I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt.
No, please.
Are you starting to feel like this isn't going to work? Like they already know this might not work, but we're going to keep throwing stuff until we get rid of this guy. Like at this point, it's like, okay, so at this point, these guys are just going to continue to hound me until they get rid of me. Well, is that what, are you feeling like that? Like, I mean, look, they've already lied. This investigation. You know what? Throw another one at him. Throw another one at him. Throw another one. Like something will stick eventually.
If it got to that point a year or so later, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a scholar, and maybe I'm too stupid to realize what was going on, and I'm very shocked. Like, how could you do this to me, knowing that I have my chief and my marshal and everybody supporting me? Even other people from the task force are like, this is crazy, what's happening, and I'm still in my position of power of being a supervisor of the Warrant Squad. And keep in mind, while all this is going on, I have some of the biggest cases of the world I'm working. I'm part of the investigation, arrest, extradition, and trial of El Chapo.
Okay.
So with my name is right there on the paper as being a supervisor on this investigation with other marshals I worked with the DEA out in Long Island. Huge. Right. And it's happening in Brooklyn. As I'm being investigated, this is going on. So I'm under investigation. It lingers for 2 years. Not until April 2019 do I get a notice from Internal Affairs that they want to talk to me. It's like, you got to be kidding me. This has been going on forever.
Right.
So thinking nothing's going to happen, that they would have just dismissed it.
Right.
As that's happening, I also arrest a U.S. Marshal's top 15. It's like an equivalent to a FBI top 10.
Right.
This guy, Andre Nevison, wanted in Brooklyn, on the Marshal's top 15 for a decade. Was on America's Most Wanted with that John Walsh. Yeah. And he murdered his sister and his girlfriend. Okay. So many people worked that case. They stepped all over it. It was a disaster. I come in and we get a teletype that his FBI number is hitting in Connecticut. But
what does that mean?
That he was fingerprinted, and it comes back, his fingerprints match this FBI number, but the name and the date of birth aren't the same. So Bridgeport, Connecticut let him go. They let him go. They don't follow up. So we come into work the next day, and I got the teletype, and we're reading over it, and I asked one of my analysts to call up there to find out. And we go back and forth. We're like, can you share a picture with us? So we're like, holy shit, this is the perp.
Right.
This is the guy. So now I have to make a couple phone calls. People are like, nah, there's no way. He's in Trinidad. He's dead. He's that.
It's his fingerprints. It's him.
It's him. It's solid. So now we're trying to do some due diligence because of the different name, AKAs and that.
It's not hard to get a DM.
It's not.
Yeah, it's not.
So it wound up being like a traffic violation. And so the Bridgeport PD, we start working well with them, and they're giving us information, sharing photos, information on the car. And I go in, and my chief now is working with a couple of the other supervisors, and they're planning the trial security of El Chapo. So I walk in, and I'm like, hey, we're going to arrest a top 15. And he just laughs. He's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Meanwhile, I just got done working El Chapo with the extradition, and I'm under criminal investigation.
Right.
So within an hour, I had set it all up with guys up in Connecticut, coordinated everything, and they were sitting outside his house, and they're calling me, and they're sending me video and photos of our guy sitting on his porch. But the marshal like, hey, we're waiting for some backup. You know, this guy's a major player. You know, we killed 2 people, right. His sister and a girlfriend. So
yeah, and he knows he's going to go to jail for the rest of his life. So, yeah, he may very well. Put up a fight,
but he's got away with it so many times. He's been on the run. But he's wanted out of Brooklyn, and he's in Bridgeport. Within an hour, they call me up, send me a photo. They're like, we arrested him, and I got the deputy marshal up there. He's like, thank you, you just made my career. I arrested a top 15. I'm like, yeah, no problem. Not looking for anything. I did my job. So I go in and I tell my chief, and he's like, I can't believe this. That year, our district, Eastern New York, as District of the Year for being one of the largest districts in the nation, 8th largest district in the nation for the work we did with El Chapo and the arrest of this top 15. So
Right.
because of me.
Right.
But no crap. I'm like, yeah, whatever. You did your job. And I'm under criminal investigation. So now I go, after that, the same guy from the marshal's headquarters who made the decision to investigate me, to investigate themselves, the task force, this guy comes to Brooklyn a day or two after we arrest the top 15 because he wants to walk through the courthouse to see what's going to go on with the El Chapo trial. So he's an executive. He's like the number 2 guy of the Marshal Service. So he comes in, sees me, he gives me the typical handshake and the street hug.
Right.
Like he's proud of me and all that, but never congratulates or thanks me for doing a job well done.
Right.
Because he's stabbing me right in the back as everything's going on. So there I have my opportunity to call him out. This is the number 2 guy at the Marshal Service.
Right.
So I'm not a coward, I'll do whatever you want. We can talk, we can debate, we can fist fight, we can argue. I'll do it all.
Right.
So this guy is just a regular deputy, just like me. He came up through the ranks. It's just that he took all the tests and he transferred from where he was. Now, backpedal, he was from New Hampshire. And the person who investigated the office culture case was from New Hampshire.
Okay.
So they all know each other. But this guy, the number 2 guy, he's now running the Marshal Service. Totally forgot where he came from.
Right.
So I'm like, you're a real, you really suck, man. I go, you know what they're doing to me and you're letting this happen. He's like, we're just going with what Internal Affairs is investigating. Whatever accusations are made, we have to investigate. But you initiated the investigation. Right. You created this and now it just snowballed out of control. And because you want to protect your congressionally funded task force, because if Congress hears about this or the public hears about this, you're going to look like a real piece of garbage because you let sexual harassment take place here and you didn't defend or protect one of your own. You went against your own to say that we were wrong, and look what we did when our own were wrong. We got rid of them. When the other people, the outsiders, were wrong, but you didn't want to have that political battle with outside law enforcement.
Right.
It's silly, but it's true. It happens. So now I just do this big arrest. I'm under IA. Now I get notice that they want to talk to me. So finally, now I have to go to headquarters with my own private attorney. Again.
Right.
So now I go there and I'm summoned to be there for 2 days. 2 days of investigation against me. And it's stemmed and it's a whole list of things.
And it's just because of a phone call from a woman
That's how it started. That's how it started. And that was in the middle of the interviews. In the very beginning, they asked me if I was a racist, if I used the N-word. So my lawyer's enjoying this. That was already investigated and closed. What are you doing? You're harassing them. You're retaliating. So we put it on the record. It was there. Then they said... they asked me about the man who started all this. So we're like, this has already been asked and answered. It's already done. What are we doing here? So then they went in and said, one of the deputies that worked for me years ago got pulled over in New Jersey for speeding. And he got a ticket. I'm like, okay. They're like, we have a text chain of you two talking and you telling them all right, well, just go take care of it.
Right.
Did you called the New Jersey State Police and fixed the ticket? I'm like, that's what you're getting off this day. So they said I misused my power to get a ticket fixed, which I didn't. And that deputy admitted it, saying I didn't do anything. Right. But still, they used my...
they just throw enough at you.
But that was one thing. That was abuse of power. Then they went in and said, I stole a cell phone, that they have a photo of it, but they don't have the cell phone. Then that lady said she had a shotgun and I gave her shotgun bullets, but they don't have any of that. And now she has a criminal history. She'd been arrested before, so she shouldn't be in possession of a gun. She said I stole a camcorder and gave it to her, but they had a picture of the camcorder that had the serial numbers on there, but they didn't run it. We don't know what that is.
Right. We don't know if that was stolen.
Well, it gets even better.
I was going to say, first of all, she's admitting that she's a felon in possession of a firearm. That's 3-year mandatory minimum.
In New York.
I was going to say federally,
But that's New York. It's the worst state in the world to get charged with a gun crime. You know, you're going in.
But they don't
care.
Yeah.
Because it's against me, Bobby Lediger.
Right.
Then she just adds more to it, and it gets better. I'm a drug dealer. I'm a drug addict. I sell drugs. I steal drugs from the evidence locker. I steal money from the evidence locker. I sell social security numbers to her for fake ID. So me and her are collusion with social security numbers to people. I filed for bankruptcy, which destroys your security clearance if I ever did that.
Right.
I am a bouncer at a bar. I'm 5'6", 160 pounds.
Right.
I'm a bouncer at a bar.
Yeah.
I don't fight, you know. I cheat on my wife. My wife cheats on me. I misuse my government vehicle. You
don't like children or small animals.
Nothing, all that stuff.
Right.
But yet I would hang out with this woman with her then boyfriend when we were working all together. We went out to dinners, restaurants, bars, but all of a sudden, this. But can't provide any evidence on any of this stuff. So the Marshal Service takes it and runs with it. And they're going more and more and more and asking me all these questions. They never give me a drug test. They never do an inventory of the evidence lockers.
They don't want anything that doesn't support their version of the events.
But why not? Why wouldn't you want to know the truth? Why wouldn't you be like, wow, this guy is getting screwed here. And he's another marshal. We're going to investigate one of our own. That's what it really comes down to. And we're going to destroy him.
Right.
He's well known. He's got over 20 years in the Marshal Service. He's a supervisor. He's in the warrant squad. I've been involved in 4 shootings. I've got a great reputation. The men and women I work with love working with me or for me. I don't have any complaints against me. Why wouldn't you want me to be cleared? Why wouldn't you want to find the truth? So as I'm sitting there with internal affairs,
I'm hoping you know that. Do you know the answer to that?
No, I'm still looking for it, man.
I'm trying to think of one.
Well, I think it's funny is I have people ask me, and they're like, "Who is Bobby Lediger? Like, who am I that you came at me so hard that you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to investigate me?" I mean, it got so bad. We lived in Long Island, New York. I had a beautiful house. I had a mother and daughter house on a half-acre land. Nice big pool in the backyard. I would have parties at my house every year for all the guys and girls I worked with, friends, family. And I had to work in Brooklyn, and I was a good hour or so from home. And my wife was home alone. My mother-in-law lived next door. And the neighbors would tell my wife and my mother-in-law that there's undercover cops sitting on the block. And then we were getting screws put in our tires. They were coming on our property and putting stuff in our cars. We were getting pulled over.
All of this started because you told a couple of fraternity guys, stop bullying this chick.
100%. And it's a fact. That's why it started. It's a fact. It all came out because those same men who were bullying her and hit her and harassed her, they admitted in their own statements that I violated the blue wall. I went against them. I believed her over them. And they admit it. And the Internal Affairs saw it. And my own people, my own leadership read it and saw it. And they knew people were coming after me. So now these people put my family and life jeopardy. They put my wife in fear. So while this is all going on, my wife's like, I want out of here. We turn around, snap at a finger, and we sell our house in Long Island.
Buried by the U.S. government and ignored by the national media. This is the story they don't want you to know. When Frank Amadeo met with President George W. Bush at the White House to discuss NATO operations in Afghanistan, no one knew that he'd already embezzled nearly $200 million from the federal government. Money he intended to use to bankroll his plan to take over the world. From Amadeo's global headquarters in the shadow of Florida's Disney World, with a nearly inexhaustible supply of the Internal Revenue Service's funds, Amadeo acquired multiple businesses, amassing a mega conglomerate. Driven by his delusions of world conquest, he negotiated the purchase of a squadron of American fighter jets and the controlling interest in a former Soviet ICBM factory. He began working to build the largest private militia on the planet, over 1 million Africans strong. Simultaneously, Amadeo hired an international black ops force to orchestrate a coup in the Congo while plotting to take over several small Eastern European countries. The most disturbing part of it all is, had the US government not thwarted his plans, he might have just pulled it off. It's insanity, the bizarre, true story of a bipolar megalomaniac's insane plan for total world domination. Available now on Amazon and Audible.
And I'm still working and she works. I have a couple of years till I can retire. My family is good. We have a condo in Queens. So me and my wife are staying there. My mother-in-law had to go stay with another family member. And then we wound up buying a house in Florida while we're still working. So my wife's like, that's it. She talks to her boss. He finds out what's going on. People are like, this is insane. This can't be happening. And it's like the movie Copland. You know, it's Sylvester Stallone where all the dirty cops live in one neighborhood. So we're like, no, it's happening, you know. And even my own chief just couldn't believe it. And they were like, what are you doing? Like, I'm like, how do I protect my wife?
Right.
What do I do? You know, you hear all these people, you know, and not to diminish anybody or anything, but how many times do you hear people, men, you know, you mess with my family, I'll kill you.
Right.
Really? You're going to do that? You're not going to do it. Everybody talks a big game. I had to do something. Right. And the only way to protect my wife was to leave the state. And that's what we did. And I stayed in New York, and I would take leave and go back and forth to visit with her in Florida. She worked from home now in Florida with her company out of New York, which was great. They helped us out a lot. And now this is in 2019.
Yeah. I was going to say that I think the problem is that you wouldn't, like, it's not a far leap because for you to do that, because given the situation, like, you wouldn't think it would have gone as far as it has already gone. So the idea that it wouldn't go a step further, it would be stupid to think, oh no, they won't do anything to my wife. They won't mess with my family. They won't do. No, they've already continually pushed that bar. There doesn't seem to be a limit. So so to say, hey, look, let's just sell. Let's get out of this. I mean, I can totally see that, because I was thinking, wow, that's like, you know, that's a huge step. But at this point, they don't seem to be stopping. So I don't see what other choice you have. Nobody seems to be looking out for you.
No one is looking out for me. Granted, I had the support of my own district. The people like backed me and like, you're a good guy, but that goes so far.
Yeah.
You know, I need presence. I need protection. I need money, you know, and what do you do?
Right.
So that was the best thing we did. We didn't want to do it. You know, we changed our whole lives. And the agency, the Marshal Service, knew I was doing that. I told them in internal affairs that I had to leave because you people did nothing for me. You knew they were coming after me. They told you they were coming after me, and you did nothing.
Right.
And they still, to this day, you never helped me. Nothing. They tell you when you're in internal affairs, you're sitting there like, well, you can call EAP, you know, the Employee Assistance Program, you know,
right,
to vent to some lady in India that I'm feeling depressed or something.
Right.
Like, come on. So, and I'm still working. So now we'll back up a little bit again, and I'm still in internal affairs being interviewed. So they're asking me about being a drug dealer, stealing money. They're asking me then if I'm a bouncer. They're asking me if I fix tickets. Now they want to see my cell phone. The government cell phone, here you go. They take it, they bring it in the back. It's gone for a couple hours, so they're downloading it. They come back, and they had a folder. And they open up their folder. They give me back my cell phone, government cell phone, and they're showing me pictures of a naked Playboy model. I'm like, okay. They're like, do you know who this is? I'm like, yeah, I know her very well. And she was a fugitive that we arrested.
Right.
So I'm like, okay. So internal affairs is blown away. They're like, she's a fugitive? I'm like, yeah. I go, it was all over the news. It's all a big thing. I go, it was a Hague Act. She kidnapped her daughter from the husband who was in France. She was from Vietnam. And they issued a warrant for her. We arrested her the next day trying to flee the country with the daughter and brought her in. I said, we photographed everything that she had. She was an international Playboy model, a DJ.
Right.
And I'm like, I took pictures of the Playboy book for identity and evidence. Here's all her clothes. Here's all her jewelry. Here's her 5 cell phones, her laptops. Here's everything we have. Here's all the emails from the U.S. attorney saying thank you for all that information.
All right. So it's a case file.
It's a case file, 100%. And it's all there. The emails are there. No, you should have deleted those pictures. I'm like, no, you can't. It was on a work phone. It's legit. It's evidence. I said it's saved in the cloud. You can't get rid of that anymore because you people in the government created this cloud to keep it. And plus, everybody knows about it. No, we think you kept those photos for self-gratification. That's a crime, in the Marshal Service.
Okay.
Yeah, it's self-gratification. So the lady who's saying that to me, I just assumed that she was jealous because she did not look like the Playboy model. So that was a personal hit toward me. I'm like, I'm married. Been married for 25 years. My wife is absolutely gorgeous. And this is the year of the internet.
Right.
I don't need to take pictures of a Playboy book when I can just go on the internet and find whatever you want. This is what we're dealing with. These are grown adults who are coming up with this information. So that was thrown out against me too. Then I was at one point being looked at or so-called groomed to be appointed as the U.S. Marshal in Eastern New York, Brooklyn, under President Trump. So I had people above me saying, you should put in your application to become a presidential appointee. While I'm being criminally investigated, while that's going on, and then because my background is so well, and then I have such a great relationship with other people that are endorsing me. But I have my own agency trying to put me in jail.
Right.
But I have powerful people saying you should be in charge. It's a true tale of two cities, this whole story.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is great. So while they're investigating me criminally, they're investigating me also to be appointed.
Bent is the story of John J. Boziak's phenomenal life of crime. Inked from head to toe, with an addiction to strippers and fast Cadillacs, Boziak was not your typical computer geek. He was, however, one of the most cunning scammers, counterfeiters, identity thieves, and escape artists alive, and a major thorn in the side of the U.S. Secret Service as they fought a war on cybercrime. With a savant-like ability to circumvent banking security and stay one step ahead of law enforcement, Boziak made millions of dollars in the international cyber underworld with the help of the Chinese and the Russians. Then, leaving nothing but a John Doe warrant and a cleaned-out bank account in his wake, he vanished. Boziak's stranger-than-fiction tale of ingenious scams and impossible escapes, of brazen run-ins with the law and secret desires to straighten out and settle down, makes his story a true crime con game that will keep you guessing. Bent: How a Homeless Teen Became One of the Cybercrime Industry's Most Prolific Counterfeiters. Available now on Amazon and Audible.
So that's all going on. So now we move forward into 2020. And I'm still lingering under internal affairs. I've been interviewed by some people under the Trump administration for an appointment.
Right.
So just can't believe it. And at this point, my wife is totally disgusted with the government to no end. So
what a waste of money so far.
They it's a shame. And listen, I proudly can say that the American taxpayers got their money out of me.
Right.
I worked my ass off every day. So we're in 2020. This is the year I'm eligible to retire, to have 25 years in the Marshal Service. It's good. I came on June 95. I can retire June 2020. So I think it was in February or March, I put in to retire. that I want to retire at the end of June 2020 because of I just want out.
Yeah.
Well, when I put in to request that I can retire in June 2020, I am now hit with another proposed removal from everything that Internal Affairs did to me. And of course, it's abuse of power, failure to supervise, lack of candor, misuse of my government vehicle, my phone, anything you can throw on there. So I have my lawyer again. We have to write up a rebuttal. I collect more letters than the first case. All my awards again, being part of the arrest with El Chapo and Nevison, great things. So we go now to headquarters to speak with the deciding official, and this lady actually knows me, personally knows me. She was my class advisor. We even had emails exchanged that she knew what was going on at the task force in Long Island of how I was protecting Dawn and that it was all messed up.
Right.
But she forgot that. So we sit down and talk to her. She only talks to me for about 15 minutes. So we knew she made up her mind. She was going to fire me. And I sat there and I begged her. I go, listen, I'm just going to retire. I want to retire in June. I can retire in June and I'll have 25 years, leave me alone. So like I said, it's the end of February 2020. You know what just kicked off February 2020? Worldwide pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
We're shut down, man. That's it. The government is shut down. Everybody in headquarters is teleworking. They're at home.
I think that would help you out.
We all thought it would help me out. I'm like, I can't win this fight anymore. So April 17th, 2020 is Friday. I get an email from Human Resources Marshal Service headquarters that I am awarded retirement June 30th, 2020. I can retire on June 30th, 2020. Perfect. I'm in Florida. I'm using up my annual leave and sick leave because I only have a few months left.
Right.
I have more time in my hand to use up than
time left to
on
retire.
The job. Yes. So that was April 17th, 2020, of Friday. Monday, April 20th, 2020, 4 o'clock, my chief calls me. You're fired. They terminated you.
Holy shit.
Just like that, snap of the finger. And I just sat there and I couldn't believe it. And then I could believe it. And I'm like, all right, this is a joke, worldwide pandemic, we're shut down. So I read what they write. And this lady who knew me, she's like, the Marshal Service leadership doesn't have the confidence in you to perform at a satisfactory level. I respond back, I too don't have the confidence to respond at a satisfactory level, but I've always performed at an outstanding level for the last 20 years, and you all signed off on it. It was in my record. You don't even know what my evaluations are.
Right.
I'm above what you want me to be. And the best one was that the naked pictures of the Playboy model. I find that you did keep these pictures for self-gratification. Where's your evidence on where you can never prove that? I've never printed them. They weren't on there was nothing to get, like, it was insane. But this is what they come up with. So we then file an appeal with what's called the Merit System Protection Board. It's a joke. It's a kangaroo court that's created by the government. It's supposed to be more for the employee, but it's totally turned tides and it's more for the government. And what happens is a guy like me doesn't fight them. You don't go up against the government. You don't have the money to do it. You have to pay for lawyers. I now am fighting them, and I'm very fortunate. I have the National Police Defense Foundation backing me over the Marshal Service, and they created a legal defense fund to help pay my legal fees.
Nice.
My case is sitting, and it's going to take a while. It takes years because it goes before a quorum, a 3-panel quorum.
All right.
And they were all appointed by the president. So Biden just last year appointed 3 of them. 1 already resigned. So now there's only 2. It's like, you just can't.
Right.
So that comes 2020, and what do? I got no job. I lost everything.
Right.
I lost my salary. I lost my pension. I lost my medical benefits. Everything. Everything's gone. And so for about a week, I sat in a corner crying, depressed, feeling shame and embarrassment. And my wife was like, that's it. Let's go. And I did some great things, man. I had to go. I went on unemployment out of New York, and I did that for several months. And then she's like, we got to get a job. You got to get something. But it's the pandemic. I'm screwed.
What are you doing? Yeah, what job?
What I put in for Home Depot. I couldn't even get that.
Yeah.
And next, down where I am, I put in and I became a supervisor at a pre-planned retirement center. And it was it's a well-off place, but it was horrible, getting $25 an hour, but I had to do something. They gave me benefits, so I had to have it. But I was really lucky too, because I'm a veteran, and the VA here in Florida was great, so I had medical protection there. My wife had medical protection from her company. They were helping. Then I started searching around a little bit more, and I wound up finding a good job through LinkedIn, which pushing my story out there.
Right.
And I now currently work as a security consultant for a nonprofit organization, international. I do a lot of traveling. It's great. The organization supports the hell out of me for what I did, and they can't believe it. But also, what happened during all this time is I connected with some great people on LinkedIn. Right. LinkedIn was great for me. I didn't do Facebook or any of the other social media. And I met this one guy who's an FBI agent, lawyer, who got jammed up. They went after him, and he's fighting them as well. He put me in touch with another FBI agent who resigned before they could fire him. And he waited a few years until he reached a certain age. And he went back and got a government job. So I connected with that guy, and he was telling me about it. And I'm like, I can't do that. He's like, you have over 20 years as federal law enforcement.
Right.
And he goes, you're over the age of 50 now. He goes, you have 7 years in the Navy. I was terminated with 24 years and 10 months.
Right. Yeah.
To go. That's if that's not personal retaliation, you can't. And everybody knew it. So this guy educated me and gave me the policies and the programs to follow. And I like saying I used the government against the government.
Right.
And I got my retirement.
Okay.
So I beat them at their own game. And I got my full 32 years retirement, law enforcement, everything. I have my medical benefits, and they give you a Social Security supplement till the age of 57.
I mean, what'd you do? Go get another job and work for 2 months?
Yeah, I don't want to go into great detail.
Okay, I understand. That's fine. It's fine.
Because I'm writing a book, and it's going to be in the book. But yeah, you know what? Yes. Right. Yes, but you don't know what I did or how long I did it. But it's amazing. And it's what you do to protect your family and yourself. Right. And, you can't let them get to you. And that's like the whole thing of my story is, don't give up. Don't ever give up. Don't give in. Don't let the bad actors take you down, and that's what I try to put out there. Even when they come at you with things, and the lies that people say about you and the false accusations, and it sucked, but you fight through it. And now you can, I can look at these people right in the eye and know that they're garbage, and I'm not impressed by them. The government lawyers are not anything. they're still government lawyers. If you were that good, you'd be in the private sector.
Right.
Right?
I used to always say that, like, you don't get to the top of your field and end up working for the Bureau of Prisons. Like, you know, like from the doctors all the way down. Like, that's just not how it works.
No.
So, yeah, it's I was going to say, there's a guy I interviewed who runs a YouTube channel. I should put you in touch with him. He'd probably be interested in your story too, because he actually, Wade, remember the guy that it was a self-defense, but it was stand your ground, where he was attacked in his own home by a guy and shot him, you know, but he was attacked. The guy was drunk. They'd both been drinking. The guy was drunk. He attacked him multiple times. He told other people he was going to kill him, and then he attacked him, and Wade shot him, and they arrested Wade. He got out. He's like, I was in my own house. You know, and this guy attacked me over and over again. You can see that I've been hit. You can see that, like, the whole thing. And it was really just one detective she was brand new detective, first case she worked, decided she wanted to get him. And they fought it. He pulled $100,000 out of his retirement to fight the case. Mm-hmm. And it took like 2 years. And the only reason they didn't go forward with it, is because a new district attorney came in, and his lawyer went in and said, I want to sit down with you and just show you the evidence. And he told Wade, look, it's a risk because we're laying out our whole case. And they laid out the whole case and showed it to him. And the guy was like, oh yeah, I'm dropping this. Okay. But yeah, you know, it's, you know, they pad the file. They hire somebody to come up with a forensic report that supports their version. Mm-hmm. And I've done a lot of, I don't know if you know much about me, but I've written a bunch of stories, right? And I've of true crime stories. And, you know, I have a guy who, like, literally the FBI continually investigated this one person and asked, They padded the file with all of these people that said he did it. So by the time it's done, you've got 30 people, 28 of which said he did it, you know, but out of almost all of those, they can't really tell you who told them that. And it all really stems from one guy telling this guy, who tells this guy, who tells this guy. And then so this guy talks to the FBI and says, this is what I've heard. But it all really comes from one guy.
Of course.
You know, and then when you're completely done, it's like, it does look overwhelming. And if you were to go to trial, it would seem overwhelming because all these people would get on the stand and say, yeah, this is what he did. You know, but really, if you look at it, it's like, okay, well, you padded the file. Like, you only investigated people that supported your version of the
narrative.
Story. Yeah, your narrative. So why didn't you? Matter of fact, they actually gave people lie detector tests until they came up with their version. And then when they came up with their version, they stopped giving it. They just took the thing. Okay, did you give them a lie detector test on that version? Well, no, because we knew that was the version that we wanted to go with. So why would we give them a lie detector test? Well,
it's amazing you bring that up about the lie detector test, and you look at like something like the Marshal Service, and you wonder, like, what makes it, what's happening today with law enforcement. And I'm sorry, I jump around a little bit, but the Marshal Service does not do polygraphs. They don't lie detector new employees or even their staff. Why not?
Right.
Why wouldn't you raise the standards to have the best people out there? Instead, you lower the standards. You're doing away with some of the fit requirements, the education.
Right.
Why wouldn't you want the best people? Your weapons quals. And it's amazing. And it all comes down to like the way the culture is today, you know, current events. And it's a shame. I mean, I was watching something a few days ago on ESPN, and they were showing a story of Whitney Houston singing the national anthem in 1991.
Right.
What happened? What happened today that now everybody's a racist, you know, and that's the thing to call out there. Well, you're white, you're a racist. Everybody's white supremacy. Really? Right. And what happened? Because she came out, beautiful woman. She's wearing sweats. She wasn't dolled up in a gown or anything, and she sang the national anthem, the best anybody's ever heard it. Oh. And when I went through what I went through, and to see that they pulled the race card against me, to come at me.
They just come out left field.
Why?
You never saw that coming?
Never saw it coming. The best that they said to me, they were like, I was such a racist, And I didn't have, and I don't even know the proper language to use anymore because you don't know what to say. But they're like, you don't have black people at your house. Like, we had dozens of pictures. I'm like, I have to prove that I had black people at my house. My own family members are married to someone of color or anything.
Right.
And I have to prove this? And I had a guy I worked with, big guy, and we're the same age, same exact age. And black guy from Queens, and we're great friends. And he lives in California now, retired. He wrote one of the best letters for me ever. And he goes off on the letter saying, I'm proud of the Marshal Service for investigating racism and doing what you're doing, but you got the wrong guy.
Right.
Why don't you ask me, and I'll tell you who the racists are. But this is how you're going to do it?
Yeah, they don't want to hear that.
No, they don't. And it's a shame, and you want to hear the truth. And then just the girl Dawn I defended, she's defending me today. So
is she still in the Marshals?
No, she retired. And what's odd is that during her last year or two, they were going after her and making accusations. The same bad actors that she complained about made complaints about her, that she took her dog to work. She misused her government car, like all the petty ass things. And the same lady that decided to fire me made a decision to suspend Dawn. So then she filed an EEO, and they settled with her because they knew the deciding official was showing favoritism toward the task force. So Dawn settled her EEO. They gave her back all her lost days. They promoted her, and they gave her money. But you still came after me.
Right.
When the original thing was, I defended Dawn, for what it was, and it was all pure retaliation. But they pile it on. It's just like you said, they pad the folder, they pad the case, and they put so much in there, and they weren't even complaints against you. Like you're finding stuff to investigate.
Well, I understand, like the racism thing, like they have your phone, right? Like there's text messages, there's like, if I was so blatant and I'm saying this hundreds of times a day, then I certainly would have said it in a text. I certainly would have thrown it into an email. I certainly would have nothing, right?
Nothing at all. But here's the conversation you and I just had now for the last hour or so. It's the most you're going to speak almost in a week. It's as long as we spoke. And it's been hundreds of thousands of words we said, maybe. Right. Not once did we say the N-word.
Right.
But I say it all day long.
Yeah.
And I hold my head up, like this. You got me, and my dad says it, and I get what he's saying, and it's a shame that he thinks like that. There he goes, even when you win, you lose, because of all the money I've lost over the years of going through this. And somebody just called me the other day looking for help, and he's like, well, how much did your lawyers cost? I'm like, more than your salary. Yeah. But you can't ask those questions. Everybody has a different amount. But if that's what you're worried about, to fight, to prove yourself, don't call me, because you're going to spend a lot of money to fix this.
Well, like I told you about that guy, Wade, he spent over $100,000. What if he didn't have it?
You don't have it.
What if
you
he
don't.
didn't
You
have
don't.
100?
You don't have it. Nobody has it. That's your life investments or whatever. What are they going to do? Remortgage my house to pay for my attorneys? Right. That's why the government got you. You can't. It's impossible. You can't go take out a loan.
Yeah, especially not if you were to go to the bank and say, oh, I need it for my legal fees. They'd be like, yeah, well, you're going through something we're not interested in being a part of.
Well, especially during a pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
There's no jobs out there to get a job to pay anything back.
Right.
So that's where they think that they can win. And they do. And they intimidate you. And you're afraid of them. Of what? When you sit down and you start talking to these people, it's not impressive. They're like we said, they're government lawyers. Listen, there's some U.S. attorneys out there that are unbelievable, and they're very comfortable just staying in the position that they're in because they have a family and it's a 9-to-5 job. Right. But you go to the private sector, you're putting in 20 hours a day. Yeah. To make $18 million a year. So you're gonna work hard. Yeah.
So you're waiting. You're waiting for this. You're waiting for your it's not a trial. It's
an appeal.
It's an appeal. You're waiting for the appeal to go through?
Yeah. And what I'm waiting for that is that my appeal is to get my marshal's retirement.
Right.
And to get my back pay for the 2+ years I've lost. And to get attorney fees. And then that's it.
Okay.
In the meantime, I work. I'm currently writing a book.
Right.
Putting it all out there, and living in Florida, man,
All right. Do you have anything else?
No, you got anything?
No.
One thing that I would think would be interesting if you can talk about it, like the El Chapo stuff, or like the catching the guy on like the top 15 list in the marshals, like the story about that. It could be like a 10-minute version, 5-minute version, whatever.
I can go into that too. And there's another thing too, more to add to my case, which makes it insane too, is that in August 2014, we were involved in a shooting, arrest of a shooting of a guy named Oswald Lewis in Queens. And it was a drug case out of Virginia. And we tracked the phone. And it was at like 11 o'clock at night. A house chopped up into apartments. We knock on the front door. The owner of the house is like, no, he lives in the back. So we're there, and there's about 8 marshals there and about 8-10 NYPD guys there. We surround the house. We knock on the door. Nothing. You hear the TV. We take the door. This guy goes into the back of the makeshift apartment and barricades himself into his bedroom. And so we start making entry, and me and this one other woman I worked with, we didn't even get into the door yet. We were on the frame of the door, and the perp puts his hand out and starts shooting at us. And now there's 6 marshals in this little place, and they start returning fire, and you can feel, it's hard to say, but you can feel the bullets going past your head. You can feel it, the fear and the stress and the anxiety. And so some of the marshals wound up, when he put his hand out, they shot his hand and shot the gun. And then the perp went and grabbed another gun and started shooting out the window where the NYPD cops were outside. So during he finally comes out, he surrenders, we arrest him. And
that's going to be bad. I was going to say, after shooting at the cops, I think I'd rather just go ahead, because you're about to spend the rest of your life in prison.
No, this gets better. This gets better. So we get him, we put him, we have EMS there and everything on scene within seconds. And it's New York, everybody's coming. So we take him to the hospital, and now he's getting charged with, attempted murder, federal agents and everything. Well, of course, in the courts, it starts getting dwindled down. They're like, assault, use of a firearm. We're like, it's felony in possession. Like, what do you do? So he defends himself in trial. So but before the trial, NYPD talks with him. Now he's going to start talking. They hit him with a homicide in New York. He's got a drug case out of Virginia, and then he's got the shooting at us.
Right.
So right now he's in jail for 40-something years.
Right, okay.
So while he's in there, now I'm under internal affairs investigations. He's making all these accusations that it was police brutality.
You didn't even get in the room before he started shooting?
No, but when we were handcuffed, we were beating him up, calling him the N-word.
Right.
Everything. There's dozens of people there watching this, including EMS, neighbors.
Other body cams.
Everything.
Right.
So this goes on, and one of the actual marshals who shot him is not a white guy.
Right.
I'll leave it like that. He's not a white guy. He shot him, the perp. Right. They remove him from the complaint. Okay. And then they remove the Spanish female from the complaint. Then they remove 1 or 2 other people from the complaint.
So it's down to you.
It's down to 5 people on the complaint that are white. On the complaint. While I'm being investigated by internal affairs, it's all coming down. So now the U.S. Attorney's Office is representing us because it was in the line of duty that we did this. It was a case. So now the U.S. Attorney's Office has to rehabilitate my reputation because I was fired by the Marshal Service, which works for the Department of Justice, just like the U.S. Attorney's Office works for the Department of Justice.
Right.
So they're like, how do we do this? Meanwhile, the U.S. Attorney's Office, no, we know you're a great guy. So this is all going, I'm like, yeah, let's look what I did because they've already known. It's like they pull up and they're like, well, he's part of the whole investigation, extradition, trial of El Chapo in Eastern New York, where we had the biggest criminal in our lifetime there.
Right.
And it's like, we don't know what to do. And then I put on there too about the top 15 fugitive, Andre Neverson. You know, it was one of the most high profile cases for the Marshal Service for years. It was, you know, on America's Most Wanted several times, and they've interviewed several marshals that were working that case.
Right.
And then here it is, Bobby Lediger, working with an analyst who worked with me. We track down and locate this guy Neverson and all these great people from the task force that worked on that case.
Right.
Didn't arrest him. It was us. So, you know, that all went on. But now to go backwards to add to it, that person, the perp, Oswald Lewis, who made the complaint against me and other marshals of police brutality and racism, that was finally dismissed. But it was going to go forward in Eastern New York as a trial against us, that he was suing us while he's in jail. And it's like, you can't make this stuff up, what was going on. And this is all in my life. This is my life for almost 5 years of complete hell. And people are like, how did you... And only a couple of people said, I would have killed myself to go through what you were going through. And you're like, no, I'm not going to kill myself. You know, it's almost like, it's like a badge of honor, you know, when I'm accused of all these things from people, and I almost try to simulate it to those people who made all these accusations against me are like stolen valor.
Right.
You know, they've done nothing, you know, and they have to come take me down to get something. And, you know, these people that I worked with that did all these bad things, you know, they wear the T-shirt of the job I did.
Right.
You know, and I give my dad my T-shirts because he's proud of me and not them. So.
Okay.
Anything good with that, or?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, there's a lot of good points.
We good?
Yeah.
All right. I'll wrap it. Well, one, I appreciate you coming out, making the drive. How far? What was the drive?
It was like an hour and a half. It was almost, I think it was like 99 miles. But you don't think of it because I'm just down south, you know, in Sarasota. So I'm like, oh, Tampa's an hour.
Yeah.
So
no, and it's I-75. Like,
but this is better anyway doing it. I like you. It's a better relationship.
Yeah.
Talking like that, you know, and I'm all open. I mean, these are great. This is great for me, you know, for me and for you, if, you know, even if you had Q&A and talk about other thing. And look, I'm even open. I'm close by. If you got talks you want to do to bounce things off as from a cop point to your point, and be like, what do you think? You know, I'll debate with you on things or whatever, man.
Yeah, no problem. I was just thinking, it's funny. No, never mind. I was gonna say might be the public information officer for Okeechobee Sheriff's Department, because I'm actually supposed to interview the sheriff of Okeechobee County Sheriff's Office on a story I'm writing. So I was gonna say they were gonna call me today. I never get any phone calls during the day, so when it was ringing, I was like, that's probably the because he's calling me to schedule it.
Yeah.
But it's funny too how things turn out. Like I do talks in front of law enforcement. Well,
I get that now too. Is I have some stuff on LinkedIn. Like these people call me and they're like, "Hey, will you talk this?" Like people, and I'm blown away by it. And maybe I'm cold-hearted,
right?
In a way. But I'm like, I'm not going to kill myself. You know, I'm like, I didn't go to drugs. I didn't go to to alcohol or medication. And I didn't go to religion. I'm not, I am who I am, and that's it. Maybe I say things and I shouldn't say them, but I say what I say and I own it, and
Well, you said people call you from...
people call me and they ask me to talk to other people who are in a tough spot.
Right.
And it seems like a lot of veterans, and it's really heartbreaking to hear it and for what they go through. And you feel horrible because you see the way it is today with law enforcement. And I can't believe in America is how much we discredit the military guys and girls.
Right.
And like military people, especially if they were in special programs like military police or any kind of rescue squad in the military, like special forces or anything, they should be given the top of the list to join the police departments back here or the fire departments.
Right.
We should not be just going to, to Harvard to get somebody to be a cop. These guys and girls earned it, and they should be given a job right away.
Right.
And they don't. And then you come back to America when they're overseas, and these military guys and girls have the toughest time in the world to get their gun permits to carry a gun in the country that they defended.
Right.
And you why? And everybody wants to put these tags on them. Well, they got PTSD. Really? Try to stand a post for 8 or 10 hours, protecting other people.
Right.
Just that in itself, protecting the front gate of an overseas base is glorious to what happens here in America.
Yeah.
And it's depressing. And it's to go backwards again to talk about Whitney Houston singing the national anthem in 1991. Like, what happened? Why did our politicians do this to us?
I don't know. Listen, I went into prison 13 years later. I came out, and it's just such a vastly different world. Like, imagine being removed for 13 years. When iPhones came out, there were no iPhones.
Right.
So I go to prison. I come out. Everybody's walking around staring at their phone. Nobody talks to each other. Nobody wants to work. Kids don't want to work. Like, I couldn't wait to work. Kids don't want to get their driver's licenses. They don't want to. It's like it's insanity, and people don't know how to talk to each other. They don't know. There's so many. The things that people argue over are. Initially when I hear the arguments, I kind of scoffed it off and kind of laughed about it. And now they're so passionate about things that seem so irrelevant, and it's like, are you serious? Do you guys know that China's probably going to invade Taiwan, right? That Russia's invading, has invaded what do I want to say? Chechnya, Ukraine. Like, there's like other things that are going on. There are bigger problems, we're in trouble. We're in trouble as a country. Our military has been dismantled. Oh man, it's
dismantled,
yeah.
And you need to spend so much money on things like that. And again, and where's the pride in one? Like, I went in the Navy when I was 17. I loved it. I loved it. And let's revisit some other things. Like, if you want to change the criminal justice system, let's invite criminals joining the military instead of going to jail at certain things. Let's revisit that.
Right.
Let's make things happen out there instead of focusing only on, listening to sports figures tell us how to live our lives.
Right.
Or entertainers. It's
silly.
It's very silly. I mean, it's dumbest stuff.
Things, but I didn't look at them. I mean, like, you're going to explain the whole thing anyway, and I have a brief understanding of what happened, but honestly, I've been absolutely booked the last few days.
Okay.
So, or the last week or so. But I mean, my basic understanding of I don't know. It's not really a case. I typically do like true crime stuff. I don't know if you looked at the channel or anything.
I searched around a little bit. And, my whole thing is trying to get my story out there and trying to get to bigger platforms. Reaching up to you, and telling it, because it's just insane, like what people say.
Right.
But I get what you're saying, and I looked you up a little bit too to see your background.
Right.
And being my background, it's an odd thing too. Is I arrested a Ponzi schemer years and years ago, and his name was from New York, Long Island. but his family, his parents lived in Spring Hill, Florida.
Okay.
And I had to send the marshals there, but not me, with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and to revoke the bond and seize the parents' house.
Oh, man.
It's a scumbag move.
Right. Well, I mean.
But he just got,
Yeah. But I mean, it's, the problem is that like if you're the victim, silent mode, no, on. If you're the victim of that, then, obviously you're trying to claw back as much money as possible. So if he bought his parents a house with the money, I mean, look, I'm sorry, your son's a scumbag, but we're trying to get this retiree as much money back that he stole this money from a retiree or something like.
Well, he did good. He was good for a while. He scored like 250, 300 million, whatever he was doing. But it was him and his girlfriend, kind of wife, and don't let people out on bail, man. You can't do it if you're gonna. He's on trial in Brooklyn, and then he fled.
Absconded.
Yeah.
Did he leave the country?
Yeah, we went up to Canada.
Oh. And
but we hid his cell phone and hit him. He was hanging out. He turned his phone on, and in a Subway deli store, like a fast food place.
Right.
And boom, we had his phone, and then Montreal police went in there and just snagged him up. Yeah. And then, it takes extradition is a pain in the ass. And it took us a few months to go up there and get him. And came back. But what's really sad about the whole story is that his father was a loyal father. And then his father died after they seized his house. Like he destroyed his own family.
So his last few 6 months or a year, it's your house is your son's thrown in jail. Yeah, I understand. I've been that disappointment. So,
but that was like the most intense criminal investigation case I ever did. Otherwise, I just worked warrants and worked the street up in New York and part of the task force, and then just went off the, street savages.
Right.
Savages. Completely. I've been in shootings, fights, everything. But the difference, you can tell that, clean business crime to.
Yeah. Well, it always killed me when, like you talk to these guys, these white collar guys where the marshals show up and they pull their guns and they scream and holler and they're just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, whoa, like I filled out some paperwork. Like I don't have a weapon. Like I get it if you've got a history of violence and stuff, but it's the whole overwhelming force or. Well, it's funny. There's a guy, Rashi, I forget his name, and it was in New York, and like he was a Wall Street guy. It was like $500 million, something outrageous. And for him, they came and they like knocked on the door and they were like, "Listen, you got to come with us."
Yeah.
They were real nice, and he was upset because like they parked in front of my building. I was like, "Parked in front of your building? Like you stole $500,000, or you were accused of." The marshal doesn't know whether it's valid or not. They don't know. Like I was giving an order. I got to get this guy. They said he's a bad guy. He's got to come to jail. Yeah. So yeah, he was upset because like, oh, they had their lights on. They embarrassed me. I'm like, they didn't pull your guns. They didn't kick in your door. They didn't grab you when you were, what I'm saying? Like he was complaining that he had been treated unfairly, and it was probably the most fair arrest that I'd ever seen. Like when who came for me? Secret Service. They didn't even call the marshals for me. The Secret Service just staked out the house for like 3 days, and then they pulled up and jumped out.
Well, a lot of these agencies, they don't want to turn over the cases to the marshals because if they work it so long, they want to have, the success of making the arrest. But unfortunately, some of them can't, and that's where you turn it over to the marshals. Like we have a great working relationship with like DEA and ATF, but there was, they're out in the street every day. They're building cases all day long, and they actually don't have the time to do surveillance and go get the perp.
Right.
They have so much other stuff to do.
Yeah. I was going to say in my case, like they knew exactly, like they were given an address.
Yeah. You were there.
I was there. Like they're going to watch it. They actually watched. I was staying in a hotel we'd had a robbery. And so, we weren't staying there anymore, and we were staying in a hotel, and the local sheriff's department or police department they knew we'd had a robbery. So they called and said, "Hey, can you meet us there so we can get the surveillance tapes. And I said, sure, no problem. And I pulled up because they'd watched it for 3 days. They were like, this guy, where's this guy? He's not here. And so I showed up and they pulled up. But it was funny too, because the Secret Service, the FBI had an indictment out of Florida. Secret Service had one out of Georgia. And like they weren't cooperating. Yeah. And so, with each other. And so I don't know if they didn't want to call the marshals. I'm not sure when they finally grabbed me. I know that it was so funny. I had called the FBI agent when I was on the run at one point just to see if I could turn myself in. Like, look, maybe I could get the deal or something. And I was talking to her. And at one point I said, okay, she was going to call the U.S. attorney and see what he could work out. And she said, I said, well, okay. And she was, well, here, just, give me your phone number, which I'm sure she already had, like I called on a cell phone. She goes, give me your phone number and I'll call you back. And I went, I said, you're probably tracking this call. I said, I'm going to shut off the phone. I'll call you back. She goes, oh, get over yourself. She goes, you're not that important. And I was like, yeah, like, who do I think I am? And I was like, yeah.
And stop watching TV.
Yeah. And I was but I was thinking, no, you know what? I just feel like, no, I'm going to. So I said, no, you know what? I'll call you back in an hour. She goes, okay. I hung up the phone, turned it off. Later, when I got to prison, I ordered my Freedom of Information Act, and I found out that she immediately called the marshals. The marshals called like Verizon. Verizon said that phone number was just issued to a phone that was purchased it was like a 7-Eleven that was connected to like a Subway sub sandwich place. And I was sitting in the Subway this whole time. I waited the whole time. And they immediately issued 2 marshals to drive to that location. And I just happened to leave before they got there.
How long ago was your case?
That would have been 2000. That specific thing happened in 2005.
Yeah, those days are over. That's not happening anymore. And the government does it to themselves. They just screw themselves with reporting so much to the courts and everything. Because now you can't do that. Now you have to have a full-blown search warrant to go after a phone.
Really?
Oh my God! Yeah.
Oh, it's funny too, because
back in the day, where you could do a lot more, and that you had exigent circumstances to pull up, to work with. It's funny how you mentioned Verizon and different companies that we had a good working relationship with, but now because of politics get involved and the way the current events are, is can't do that anymore. And it's funny because what hurt law enforcement was TV and the media and even things like this, these conversations. It's like they use it to sell. And watch Law and Order and you hear all the language. That's law enforcement language. So they have law enforcement representatives there who are retired and giving them the good street lingo, and now you see the movies, it's all there. So you can't do that anymore. You have to, make a report. The agent would have to go to the U.S. attorney. They have to draw up a complaint, issue for a search warrant.
By that point, the guy's long gone.
And now
they still miss me. They put 2 guys in the car immediately, and they still miss me. But I mean, who knows? If I'd stuck around 5 more minutes, they might have grabbed me.
Of course.
And it's funny too, because I didn't know I was writing my memoir when I had ordered all this documents, right? So I kept saying it was a track phone. I forget what I was referring to. And when I actually got the documents in, I actually saw like they had the phone number. They had like, it was whoever it was, like Virgin or Verizon, whoever it was. I was like, oh wow, like it was. So
you can only go back so far now because you're not allowed to look at so much information. And it's the same thing like trying to do your IP address on your
computer.
The computer. Yeah, it is.
What they won't.
You have to have
a warrant.
You have to have a search warrant to get any of that stuff now. It's hard. It's real hard.